True crime. From cold cases to serial killers, missing persons, and more.
100% he did this.
I'd go off into fantasy world.
How much more lucky can you get that you're not on death row?
You want to know what we know?
My name is Jay. This is Guilty of Crime.
Hello, everybody. I see a few people in the chat here waiting. Sadie's mama, Carly, always. I love you guys. Guys, ladies, whatever you want to call it. We'll call it the crime crew. I feel like everybody wants to fight justice. Every one of us watches the true crime channels, and we're so passionate about it, and we all want to do something. But tonight, there's nothing we can do about this one. We're just chilling, talking about the top 10 most interesting serial killers. Today, we're talking about Ed Kemper. There's a lot to talk about, though. With this, we're just chilling out on a Friday night, talking about Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer. I'm going to pull some things up in a minute. So, Ed Kemper it's not really chill when you talk about what Ed Kemper did. He was, just into necrophilia, decapitation, and dismemberment. So no big deal, right? Yeah, just a little bit. So yeah, Ed Kemper is very, very interesting. He talks about it nonchalantly. He talks about his murders nonchalantly. And I live in San Jose. This happened in Santa Cruz. So what I'm going to do is I'm trying to pull up a picture of his victims, just to have some pictures up there while I'm talking for a little bit so you can see that he had all women except for, well, his grandma and grandpa. That's an interesting one there. Let me pull up this, and I'll have something. He was called the Gentle Giant, aka he's got lots of AKAs. Co-ed killer, Gentle Giant, Big Ed. It's really interesting when we get into this and you see him talk about, I just took her head off and I really didn't like her very much, things like that. He didn't care. He was into that from a young age. So maybe I could zoom in on this. Oh, well, you know what, we'll just put this up. So it's the most interesting serial killers that we're talking about, so you kind of see here that everybody's interested in this, and you're here, so you're interested in hearing about this as well. So he was in Santa Cruz, and he did a lot of his Santa Cruz slayings from the college ladies that were hitchhiking. Now, Sadie's mama, I know you remember hitchhiking. My mom used to pick up hitchhikers when we were little. Carly, I don't know if you do or not, if you're if that was a thing for your parents or anything like that. But hitchhiking back in the 70s was like it's like Uber today. You just go out there and put your thumb out and someone will pick you up, and you never really thought that they were going to murder you until they did. And then we didn't have social media, so you only heard about it every so often. So today we're talking about Ed Kemper. Let me tell you about some of the background stuff and what we're really talking about, and then we're going to show you things. And then after we show, I say we because you all are here, I'm going to show you interviews that he talked himself in the 80s about, some trial clips, and we're going to bring Dr. G on. He just did a analysis 8 months ago, which is really lucky for me. So, his name's Ed Kemper, but it's really Edmund Emil Kemper III. He's an American serial killer, and he was infamous for a series of heinous crimes. He committed these crimes between 1972 of May and April 1973. This is a long time ago, everybody. Like, this is a really, really long time ago. So the reason I started doing this whole serial killer bring back the top 10 most interesting serial killers. That's how I started my channel. And then I started getting on everything else was because a lot of people now that I hang out with, and my daughter that's 9, her friends, parents don't even know what I'm talking about. Now, you do if you're into true crime, but May 1972 and April 1973 is a long, long time ago for everybody. So the murders that he did, he was convicted of actually murdering 7 women and 1 girl during this period of time. So that was only like a year. He also murdered his grandparents, and then he went on to murder his mom. He did it in a horrible way with his mom. He hated his mom, so he decapitated her, but that was no big deal either. So most of his non-familiar victims were female college students that he was hitchhiking or that were hitchhiking, and he picked them up in the vicinity of Santa Cruz County, California. Now, if you guys know about Santa Cruz or you're from California at all, then you'll know, it's a college, there's a college town area. And yeah, we unsolved mysteries. I like that car. I'm glad you said that, Carly. You didn't approve. Yeah, I didn't know any better when I was little. So yeah, Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer, that's what he thrived on was, wow, I could just pick these guys up. Now, I bet you guys didn't know that Ed Kemper was 6'9", 300 pounds. Maybe you did know. He's 6'9" and 300 pounds. And guess what? He wanted to be a state trooper and he wanted to be a police officer. However, he's too tall. It's like the military. If you try to go into the military, there's a too short, there's a too tall. Now, I ask you this question. Had he been able to get into being a state trooper or a police officer, would he have been a good police officer? Would it have calmed his urge to kill? I don't know. Think about that for a minute. Now, let me keep going. So, victims were college students that were hitchhiking in Santa Cruz, California. I'm in San Jose, 45 minutes from Santa Cruz, California. His modus operandi, everybody, was necrophilia. He engaged in necrophilia, which involved sexual acts with the corpses of his victims. The most known one was the victim that was his mom. Yeah, he performed necrophilia on his mom's head. All right. He often liked to decapitate too. He liked to decapitate his victims. No big deal. He liked to dismember them, take them apart, and just chill. He was a chill dude. They called him Gentle Giant and Big Ed. He was just a chill 6'9", 300-pound guy that liked to do necrophilia, decapitation, dismemberment. But his early years before the killing spree were at age 15, everybody. Kemper murdered his grandparents. All right. I want to talk to you a little more personal before we actually start doing some getting into it further. And I cannot, for some reason, I feel like I froze here. 1 second. Let me try and see. Let's see something. Let's get back. Let's get out of here and see if that helps. All right. I'm going to just talk to you guys for a minute without that because my internet is being glitchy, but I'm going to fix it. I got a hardwire and I got a splitter and all that fun stuff. So America's Most Wanted, Robert Stack's voice puts me to sleep, just so you know. Okay. For the people that are new to the channel, I have a range of people I want you to know. Dead split, triple way, 18 to 25 years old, and then 26 to 35 and 36 to like 55 or whatever it is. So I have 3-way split of people watching me, everybody. So I don't know if they like the talking as much, but you're with me. We're talking. Let me finish this one. So early crimes, he killed his grandparents, his real grandparents. He didn't do that much time. When he got out, he went to live with his mom. So at trial and sentencing, he was found sane and guilty in 1973. This was later on. You guys already know he was in prison. We know serial killers go to prison after they get caught, but there's a whole bunch of story in between. So he actually requested the death penalty, but since capital punishment was suspended in California at the time, guess what? He got 8 concurrent life sentences. So he's actually in Vacaville, which is really close to, I have property in Napa and we hit Vacaville all the time. So he's been there for, since 1973, everybody. So I'm going to take this out here and I hope you're enjoying this story so far because there's a lot more and a lot more to share. Most of the time my intros will start with videos and such, but it's just so much. Let me put this back on. I mean, let me put something on that we're going to play first, and then I'll talk a little more, and then we'll listen to other people talk about it. And yeah, let me tell you this too. Ed Kemper, he actually, after he got out of prison, he went to go live with his mom. He killed his grandparents, everybody, both of them, in Santa Cruz, California at 15, and then he got out of jail and then went to live on the rest of his life. Nobody knew about anything. He was hanging out with the cops. He worked at the Department of Transportation, and he applied to be a state trooper, like I said, but he was 6'9" and 300 pounds. They rejected him. And so what happened was he decided to go across the street to the police headquarters and hit up the bars there and be friendly with the cops. So that was the closest thing he could do to becoming a cop. That's how he became Big Ed, Gentle Giant, and then co-ed killer. So he loved the police officers and wanted to be one. He just couldn't. All right. So did the cops make a mistake in not hiring him? I don't know. I wonder if he would have. Oh, hold on. Oh man, my thing's being glitchy today. I pulled this down. I wanted to be able to share that one, but I gave you the backstory, I guess. All right, so that one doesn't let me pause it or anything. I gave you the story in my own voice. Now I'm going to share some things. All right. And I know it's nothing that we're getting heated about, but tonight it's just been one of those weeks, everybody, where I kind of got to be on a chill mode. Drama is funny and solving cases is real serious. So when I do the serial killer thing, most of the time it's solved, it's done, we all know about it. Let's get into this, and I'm going to show you the victims first. I have some people dropping in and dropping off. Maybe they don't want to hear me talk. I don't know, but I'm going to show you his victims. It's creepy because they're animated. And then I can just chat with you guys while I'm not trying to get this stupid thing going here. I don't know why it's like not letting me change modes at all. Oh, there it goes. It's just in slow motion. So yeah, let's watch the victims. Let's see who they are. They were in black and white, but somebody animated them. So this cruel world did that. Thank you to them. Go for it. Oh, come on. These are his victims. That's creepy. There you go, y'all. I'm gonna stop sharing that. That was very creepy. If you can see that little, let me zoom in on that there. Let me show you the actual victims if I can. If you look down there, and I could, let me close out of this and stop sharing. I cannot wait to get this thing hardwired. It's gonna be a blessing and a curse because you're gonna see me like all the time on here for hours at a time. What's up, Jared 13? You made it, and that's okay because I've been talking for 15 minutes now, all by myself, without playing videos and listening to other people. I think I can do that. I need better internet though. All right. So we're talking about Ed Kemper, the gentle giant. I showed you some creepy ass pictures. I didn't even see those before I played them for you. That was really creepy. I want to share the pictures of the victims for you so you know who we're talking about. I want to put a name and a face, even if they're in black and white. That was really weird. But I like to bring new things to the channel, and I've never seen somebody's victims like that were in black and white animated. So it was weird. I don't even know what happened there. All right, I'll just share this screen. Hopefully it's big enough and you could see who I'm talking about. And nothing's going the way I want to, and that's okay. Let me just show you Ed Kemper. Maybe. Well, there's the victims. You could kind of see them. They're in black and white, and my dog's barking away. So they were all women except for his grandfather. I don't know what is wrong with my internet, y'all. I'm glad people are here and they're still watching. I don't know if you can hear me yelling at my dogs, but yeah, I was telling them to get in the house. I don't know what happened. The internet is being awful. I almost think I should go back to the lower res because for some reason it just doesn't like it when it's not hardwired. Huh. All right. Well, either way, I'm going to start playing the videos and you're going to be able to watch and I'm going to be able to talk. So far, nothing's worked really well, but we're going to try. Here we go. Let's watch. Check this out. I really like this. I love court things. And guess what? We have that in my there it goes. Adjust down light. When my dogs yell and they make me take them potty, that may be stopping too because I may have to go into another area. Let's watch this, everybody.
In other matters, perhaps a bit more pertinent to the case here, there is talk among the sheriff's personnel that Kemper will be transferred to either Soledad Prison or San Mateo County Jail for security purposes, and because some of the other inmates in Cruz County Jail are becoming uneasy over his presence here.
Santa Cruz,
Attorney Jackson
y'all.
said he would protest such a move because of the time delay involved. In any event, Kemper is due back in court here June 6th. Pat O'Brien, Eyewitness News, Santa Cruz.
My computer is acting rough, everybody. hope this video is playing.
Santa Cruz County Sheriff's spokesman say Kemper tried twice last Monday to kill himself by attempting to cut an artery in his arm with a ballpoint pen clip. He was taken to a hospital after the attempt was discovered, received 6 stitches to close the wound, and when returned to jail, put in a cell by himself under close surveillance. In court today, his attorney requested and received a week's delay in the proceedings. Kemper is charged with killing his mother, a friend of hers, and 6 college co-eds. He gave reports.
I don't know why.
Inside was a
Just
form letter,
black.
apparently from the committee to re-elect President Nixon, since the first family's picture was on the front of it,
Look,
and the
there
thank
I
you
am.
for campaign effort message inside, along with the mimeographed signatures of the president and his family. Kemper's Santa Cruz address was on the envelope. It bore a Washington postmark dated April 26th, 2 days after Kemper was arrested in Pueblo, Colorado. Kemper's attorney could not shed much light on this rather strange development.
It was mailed to him. Apparently, it came yesterday.
Did he have an active role in the campaign, you know?
He voted against Mr. Nixon.
Against Mr. Nixon?
That's what he told me.
And how would he get this letter?
You have to ask the committee to re-elect the president.
Yeah, I don't know what is going on with the internet, everybody. I can't restart in the middle, but we're going to stop sharing that and come back to me. I think what I'm going to do here is change my, this is a good one. I want to do this one. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change my settings back down and refresh. So if you don't see me for a second, then that just means that I have to refresh this and get out of this. Let's try it without the touch-ups, because this has been really rough for me today, and I can't even see what I'm showing you. So we're talking about Ed Kemper. Let me go on here and put something on. Please don't do that. I'm on there right now, please. All right. Yeah, we don't want to bring her on. And I'm not talking to my dog, everybody. All right. So what we're going to do is we did the court. We're going to go to 1984 and see how casual this guy talks here. So Ed Kemper interview, and here we go. Then I can tell, put the kids in check. There we go. It's better.
Can you say how many people might be doing crimes like you were doing?
It would be a guess, but it's not. It's far more than 35. It isn't that impossible in this society. It happens.
Are there more people?
They didn't give up.
How many?
She didn't give up. I did. I came in out of the cold. And what I'm saying is there are some people who prefer it in the cold.
Good people see.
A nice guy.
Did you like Kemper?
I like Kemper.
You were able to appear like an ordinary person, non-threatening to...
He's
As an ordinary
very
person,
nonchalant, everybody.
although I was
To
living
turn
in
this up.
life, other life. One victim let me back in the car. I locked myself out. She opened the door for me.
She
My
opened
gun
the
was on
door
the
for
seat.
him. Would you open
What
the
hell
door
am I doing
for
telling you that?
a 7-foot tall guy?
Am I a masochist? Am I looking to be tormented further?
Yeah.
I'm trying to show you just how awful
crazy.
this got, how commanding these rages got. I was raging inside. There was just incredible energies, positive and negative, depending on a mood that would trigger one or the other. And outside, I looked troubled at times. Other times I looked moody. Other times perfectly serene. Not very sane. But again, people weren't even aware of what was happening.
He looked like a normal guy.
In 1973, a series of murders shocked Northern California. College girls began to disappear while hitchhiking. 2 of the victims were picked up from the campus of the University of California at Santa Cruz. That's where Ed Kemper's mother was working as an administrative assistant.
You were involved in the campus because your mother worked there.
Yes. I was also involved in killing co-eds because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds, women, and had a very strong and violently outspoken position on men for much of my upbringing. My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated her.
You hear that? That's a very famous statement that he says there. You'll hear that over and over. I see a lot of shorts where it says, "My mother is a sick," whatever he just said, "sad woman, and I hate her." Now, Ed Kemper does look normal, but juror number 13, he was 6'9" and 300 pounds. So if you're a woman by yourself, you should be scared of him.
But I wanted to love my mother. And I watched the alcohol increase. I watched her social life drop off. I watched her get bizarre. She had terrible pain from her life, earlier life, her upbringing, a failed marriage with my father. I'm a constant reminder of that failure. I hate to distill it down into such one-word realities like that. There's a lot that leads into that happening, but that is what happened. They represented not what my mother was, but what she liked, what she coveted, what was important to her. And I was just destroying it.
Why did you actually kill the girls?
Probably because he hated his mom.
My inability to communicate socially, sexually. I wasn't impotent, but emotionally I was impotent.
Yeah, we're going to sit there and listen to this, everybody. I'm struggling on StreamYard, so I got my phone going. I can see what you can see, and I'm using my phone in chat. So soon we'll have this taken care of, and then you'll see my face and hear me all the time, nonstop talking. But right now we're watching this together. Ed Kemper, necrophilia, dismemberment, and beheading, I guess, decapitation.
I was scared to death of failing in male-female relationships. I knew absolutely nothing about that whole area. Even if just sitting down and talking with a young lady. I need to be able to really communicate. And ironically enough, that's why I began picking people up. And I'm picking up young women. And I'm going a little bit farther each time. It's a daring kind of a thing. At first, there wasn't a gun. I'm driving along. We go to a vulnerable place where there aren't people watching, where I could act out, and I say, no, I can't. And then a gun is in the car, hidden. And this craving, this awful, raging, eating feeling inside. I could feel it consuming my insides, this fantastic passion. It was overwhelming me. It was like drugs. It was like alcohol. A little isn't enough. At first it is. And as you adjust to that psychologically and physically, you take more and more and more. It's the same process. So it finally came down to the thing of, do I dare bring this gun out? Already realizing if that gun comes out, something has to happen. It was going to happen. I didn't see it then, but it was going to happen. I was playing a dangerous game with a loaded gun that got us all.
On one occasion, Kemper picked up 2 roommates in Berkeley.
In that first killing in May of '72, when that gun was pulled out, I launched it out. I had it under my leg, out of sight, parallel to my leg in the seat. It was something that had been thought out in fantasy, acted out, felt out hundreds of times before it ever happened.
Kemper drove them at gunpoint to a secluded area near a park. He took one of them into the woods, leaving the second girl tied in the car.
I just gone through a horrible experience with her roommate, stabbing her. And I was in shock because of that. I couldn't believe that it was that way. And I'm walking back there bewildered. I gotta kill her. I can't let her go. She's gonna tell him. Everybody's gonna get me. She sees the blood on my hands. What are you doing? She pulled back and she gasped. And I think, whoa, I don't want her to know what happened. I said, your friend got smart with me. She'd been getting really smart with me a lot, but I never hit her. I killed her, but I didn't hit her. I said, your friend got smart with me and I hit her. I think I broke her nose. You better come help. She's about to die. Why does she have to know that? I couldn't deal with telling her that. And when I attacked her, she didn't at first realize what was happening. It didn't go through. She had very heavy coveralls on. It knocked her right up into the lid of the car, but it didn't pierce the clothing. So it wasn't that swell a knife anyway. I went out and bought a pawn shop, huge knife. And I kept on just mindlessly attacking. She falls back into the trunk. I just killed it.
So yeah, we have a few videos to play where we hear him talk. Ed Kemper liked to talk quite a bit, so he's kind of like Jeffrey Dahmer. He was only convicted for 7 murders, even though he killed his grandma, grandpa, and his mom. He didn't get convicted for any of those ones. He got convicted for 7 girls in Santa Cruz, California. So he's a serial killer, and he says that he was just emotionally inept. He couldn't get a girlfriend, or he didn't know how to do that closeness with the person. He couldn't connect. So instead he had rage and he decided to murder them. Go figure, huh? Instead of just trying to date somebody, kill them. I guess that's a resolution for serial killers. All right. Sorry to interrupt, starry-eyed blue. Hello, everybody else, and happy Friday.
The young woman, I slammed down the lid of the trunk. She isn't dead, she's dying. And I panicked. I thought I just locked the car keys in it because I can't find them in my pocket. Oh my God, I locked them in the trunk. I'm kicking on the trunk lid and yanking on it. Oh no, I don't believe this. I started to run and I tripped over the gun that I'd had in my pants that I had totally forgotten was there. I stopped. I said, stop and think. I collected my wits. Check all your pockets. I picked the gun up. I stuck it back in my pants, now remembering I had one. I checked all my pockets, and there's the keys in the back pocket. I never put them in my back pocket.
Everyone makes mistakes, and that's what we have to hope for. The more mistakes they make, the better their chances.
I thought I was pretty slick, and went and tripped all over myself. That first 2 murders, the first 24 hours, there were 3 clear times I should have been busted, and I wasn't, because 3 different individuals or 3 different groups of people got scared and minded their own business and looked the other way.
Some of the people who are committing murders, even as we speak, if they're doing it by themselves and they tell no one about it, they could go on undetected until they decided to stop.
All right, y'all. I'm back. I'm sorry about that. I was trying to switch internet. I was trying to switch the settings. I'm gonna go back down to my regular settings and where I was giving Carly trouble and about it, and we're gonna go back on there. I don't normally have this. I don't know what is the deal, but we're right back on where we left off. I was trying to change the settings so I can actually stay on and enjoy it with you all. So let's put this back on. If I can. It's just not playing.
For a lot of years. I'm sure that may have implemented something, that may have gotten something rolling, but along fantasy lines, but it took a lot of years of development along those lines to really get off.
But how are you able to, in 1 minute, have someone's head in your hand and very shortly thereafter?
Living through a fantasy, however that would relate to that severed head.
All right, everybody. I know there was a glitch in it, but I restarted my internet connection and hooked it to a different one, and I lowered the resolution so we could actually enjoy this together. Sorry about the interruption. Let's watch this. I got a lot more tonight.
And then 5 minutes later, I'd put that away, and there'd be a knock on the door, and I'd put it away and answer the door. And the landlady would be there, and we'd discuss it.
Discuss what?
Reality. Her reality, not mine. Some people go crazy at that point. I felt that it was one hell of a tweak. I mean, to just flip out and not know where I was. To be walking up the stairs with a camera bag that belonged to a young woman that had her severed head in it. Walking up to my apartment past a happy young couple coming down the stairs who nodded and smiled at me.
No big deal, right, y'all? What do you think about that? Yeah, trying to Miranda. I like to hear and see those comments. I couldn't even imagine it, but he's talking like I would talk to you about, yeah, I woke up on Saturday morning, everybody, and I was just watching some TV. I caught this one Full House show. Like, whoa, guys, what do you think about this?
As they went by, good evening, and they're going out on a date where I'd love to be going. And I'm aware of both of these realities, and the distance between those two was so dramatic, so amazing, so violent, that really, I could feel the wheels squeaking inside. That was really pulling on it. And I imagine at that point, some people break. But I didn't literally go insane. I didn't get lost.
And all this time, Kemper was able to seem normal. He even hung out at a bar across the street from the courthouse, making friends with policemen, trying
Told
to pick
ya.
up information.
Yes.
They'd buy me a beer, I'd buy them a beer. Casual relationships, but I was poking around a little bit trying to find some things out. I knew they wouldn't be privy to hot information, but there were some things that were bothering me, like were there any speculations on how they were dying?
Did the cops like you?
They loved him.
Like I said, a friendly nuisance. I got in the way, and it was deliberate. Again, friendly nuisances are dismissed.
How did you?
So I actually asked that question to you all, if you thought that his height hindered him from becoming a cop, and would he be a good cop or a bad cop? So yeah, we know the answer now. So he said he was a nuisance to them, although one of the cops gave him his old badge and another cop gave him his gun. So they did love him. He's playing it down. There's no way they would have gave him a gun and an old badge. He could have went around telling people he was a cop.
Get the knowledge to outsmart the police.
Watching television, believe it or not, Joseph Wambaugh, police story. Got some tremendous insights into not just the gimmicks, the actual things, the tidbits that you would pick up from their procedures, but the mechanics behind that, the logic behind it, was I would not allow myself to walk into even a potential trap of behavior. And one of those was talking about those crimes too much to people, initiating conversations about that.
There was a memorial service for 2 of the victims.
Yes.
Were you tempted to go?
Yes.
But
I'd seen one too many episodes of one too many crime shows where that is one of the available resources for clues.
Uh-oh.
tracking down the attenders. One man taking pictures of the people there to eliminate as potential suspects.
Some police department, now they actually came to your house to pick up a handgun.
Sheriff's representatives. One of the detectives was upset because he heard I had a .44 Magnum pistol and was a convicted man. He came to take the gun away, and it was on he and his sergeant detective. They were staking out the wrong house. It was across the street, and I'm playing around with the car, standing next to the gun in the trunk. They come over and ask me about, excuse me, sir, do you know who lives in this house across the street here? Well, that house was 609 Harriet. You cross back over to this side into 609 Ord, and they were looking for me and didn't even know that, see what I mean? Bad news. Well, at any rate, we walk into the house to have them ask my mother about this other house, and I'm saying, hey, which 609 are you looking for? And they said, are you Ed Kemper? Yes. And it goes on. And I needed to find out what they were looking for, the murder weapon, the .22 automatic, or the .44 Magnum. And I don't want to advertise that I've got a whole bunch of guns.
You know what? I love these interviews of serial killers that are very open because we learn things from them. Miranda, you're right. The psychology part is what interests me most too. If you go back and watch my Jeffrey Dahmer video, there's a lot of psychology to what he says. And I don't know if I've done a part 2 yet, but if I do, I'm going to do the psychology and probably the behavior panel, because then you get to really see what happens with these guys in actual clinical ways and why he's so calm and so forth. But yeah, right now we're just watching him and thinking, what is going on here? When he says, yeah, I decapitated her, so calm, it's just weird.
So I made a comment to divine between the two. And I said, yes, quite a little gun, isn't it? And he retorted, a .44 Magnum, I hope so. And I said, okay, because that loaded .22 was under the front seat and guaranteed me an arrest right on the spot. And 44 was in the trunk. I forgot that. I took them in the house. We went into my bedroom, and the closet doors open, and I have a high-powered rifle with a scope on it.
You had some other stuff in the house too, yes?
Yeah. I had the personal effects and identification of the last 2 co-eds that had been murdered about 2 months before, right next to the guns in the closet, in a box.
Could he have seen it?
No, but when he arrested me for having all those guns and went through the rest of the closet looking to see if there were any pistols or anything else, he couldn't have helped notice a purse, a book bag, and co-ed ID inside of those belonging to their 2 latest murders.
So close.
I back up and said, oh,
wow.
Me. I just remembered something. And instantly he responds to what I'm saying. My hand moves. Back we go outside, and he's still thinking, boy, this is a really nice and helpful guy here.
Some of these people do what you and I do to become better killers. They practice their trade.
Didn't Kemper stop himself toward the end of his career?
Kemper says he did. He says he could have gone on. He said he had fantasies of killing dozens more people, of leaving a trail of bodies across the country, and at one point he just got on the telephone and turned himself in. He said it was time for the killing to stop. In his case, he said publicly that it was his mother that he was killing all along, and when he killed his mother, that was the end. It's a very deep psychological observation from himself. It may be very accurate.
It was springtime. It was April. And for 2 months I hadn't killed. I said, it's not going to happen to any more girls. It's got to stay between me and my mother, and it's got to. I can't get away from her.
Here it is, y'all.
Fighting. She's still belittling me. I'm like a puppet on a string, and I entertain her. She knows all my buttons, and I dance like a puppet with that pain. And it had even gotten physical, to where I had physically grabbed her and thrown her onto her bed, trying to emphasize a point that I was threatening to kill her. So here I pick up these 2 young ladies in Berkeley on Ashby Avenue. One has flowers.
Okay, so Berkeley is a trigger word for me, everybody. I told you all before that I was carjacked, and that's where I was carjacked, in Berkeley. So this is scary. Berkeley is really close to Oakland. I didn't know where I was, and I wasn't driving. I was in the back seat, and we rolled into Berkeley, which was almost right it was Berkeley, Oakland borderline. This was before GPSs were accurate. And I think we were using one of those printout maps. And so we got carjacked in Berkeley. So keep this in mind why this is so close to home. I live about 45 minutes from here as well.
In her hand, petite little dolls. They're in granny dresses and they're hitchhiking. A couple of real experts. I want to see how together I am, if I can resist this temptation.
You going to Walnut Creek? Great.
And they get in my car. They want to go one way. I know they need to go the other. If they go the way they're insisting on, we're headed right back out to where the first two co-eds were murdered. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, all I got to do is relax and they'll take me to their death. I've got the gun in the car, the same one I've been doing it with. I insisted. As gently as I could, I took them where they needed to go, to their college.
Thanks a lot.
That was 1 week before I murdered my mother. I said, she's got to die, and I've got to die, or girls like that are going to die. And that's when I decided I'm going to murder my mother. I knew a week before she died, I was going to kill her. And she went out to a party, she got soused, she came home, went to sleep. I was woken up by that, came out. I walked up to her bed. She's laying there reading a paperback, as many thousands of nights before. And she said, oh, I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now. Shit. I looked at her, I said, no. I said, good night. And I knew I was going to kill her, you know? And I'm so cold, it's so hard. And that's the first time in 10 years I've looked at it that way. I mean, that intense.
So I'm not going to interrupt when he tells you about killing her, but what I am going to say is he actually had emotion there, everybody, and you saw him crying, real actual emotion. So definitely feels some kind of either remorse or sorry for himself that he's even talking about this. It's really weird, though, to hear him talk about it. Let's keep going.
That honestly, it hurts. Because I'm not a lizard. I'm not from under a rock. I came out of her vagina. See? Came out of my mother. And in a rage, I went right back in. For 7 years, she said, I haven't had sex with a man because of you, my murderous son. It's one of our arguments. I cut off her head. And I humiliated her corpse. It's there. You know? 6 young women dead because of the way she raises her son and the way her son is raised, the way he grows up. And what's her closing words? I suppose you want to sit up all night and talk. God, I wish I had.
That was her closing words. I suppose you want to sit up all night and talk. And I suppose that when she said that, it was like she was bothering him. So no, she wasn't abusive, Miranda, but I guess verbally abusive his whole life, yelling at him. But if you missed the beginning of it, he killed his grandparents at the age of 15, and he was locked up for killing his biological grandparents, his grandma and grandpa. He went to prison, did his time, got out, and went to live with his mom. So I imagine she had some kind of rage for him, but physically abusive, not that I know of.
Your grandmother and her daughter-in-law, your mother, were two women very important in your life, and you killed them both. Could you say what they were like that led them to the same fate?
Same thing that kept them from ever being friends. They were both aggressive, matriarchal women. They'd been the daughters of strong matriarchal women. I still loved my mother, and it's hard for somebody to comprehend that you murder your mother through love. It isn't a rational process. It's a very painful process. It isn't rational, and I've got to still live with that.
Why did you wind up giving yourself up?
It had to stop. It had to stop. Once my mother was dead, there's almost a cathartic process at that point. I got physically ill right then when she died, when I murdered her. And once she was dead, there was no way I could back out. I backed down from giving up 1,000 times. You know, I used to get drunk and go sit out in front of the sheriff's department in a parking lot across the street on one of those old concrete parking berms. And I just sit there and say, no, I still can't. The clanging doors, I can still hear them. No, because they'll never open again. You know, so I rationalized that to give up would be insane.
I told you it was going to be a chill Friday, everybody. It's chill serial killer Friday. The words are very chill, but it's very shocking. The tone is very monotone, but shocking. So chill serial killer Friday. No drama here.
To give up would be crazy. I'd be giving away my freedom, and I don't need to. But I look back on that and wish I had earlier when I was saying those things to myself. The people who were later dead wouldn't be. The regret that came later would have not had to be. Those people, not things, those people would still be with their families, with their loved ones. They would have their own families. If I had had the courage to make that decision, instead of painting myself into the corner.
Where might you be if you'd never given in to the impulse to murder?
Where might I be? If my parole had been successful, I believe I'd be married, I'd have children, I'd be heading toward my first grandchildren.
I know, I was muted. Here's my Yorkie. We got more to go. So, yeah, we're going to go back and do some Dahmer Part 2, everybody. We did Dahmer Part 1. Let's do Dahmer Part 2 another night. We're going to go and do the Dr. G Explains. And then whoever wants to drop off can, because I'm going to do a really long one after that. So sit in your seats and just watch. Hold on real quick. We already know who Dr. G is, so we heard him. We're going to share Dr. G. All of our comments earlier. Now we're going to actually hear. I love Dr. G. Let's watch him.
Psychologist and body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing Ed Kemper. Edmund Kemper is an American serial killer who murdered 10 people. He murdered his paternal grandparents, numerous college-age women, as well as his own mother. In 1973, after murdering his mother, he turned himself into police, and he's now serving 8 consecutive life sentences. Before we get started with the analysis, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. What we're going to be analyzing today are interviews with Ed Kemper. What's somewhat unique about him is his degree of intelligence and intellect. You're going to notice that he is able to speak in very detailed terms, in very precise ways about things that he did, things that he thought, but you got to be very careful with him, because I'm going to point out some ways that he may be very, very manipulative. All right, let's just jump right in.
People see.
A nice guy.
Did you like Kemper?
I like Kemper.
You were able to appear like an ordinary person, non-threatening to...
I lived as an ordinary...
All right, he's talking about how he lived as an ordinary person. You're going to see a little smirk on the corner of his mouth, because the idea that he's this manipulative and that he's this good brings him pleasure. Let's watch this, and then we're going to watch it again.
Ordinary person most of my life, even though I was living a parallel and increasingly sick life.
So him acknowledging what he did was sick is going to confuse people, because then they go, okay, if he can acknowledge that, if he turned himself in, then I should believe what he's saying, because someone who would turn themselves in would have no reason to lie. But I really don't think that's the case. Let's go back. Watch this small smirk across his face as he's talking about being able to blend in as normal.
Non-threatening to...
I lived as an ordinary person most of my life, even though I was living a parallel and increasingly sick life. One victim let me back in the car. I locked myself out. She opened the door for me. My gun was under the seat. What in the hell am I doing telling you that? Am I a masochist? Am I looking to be tormented further?
All right, now we're going to talk about the various emotions he's displaying in a second, but what I really want you to hear about this, he's telling you right now exactly who he is. And you've got to look at the rest of these interviews through this lens. He's telling you, I am a wolf in sheep's clothing.
So as we watch more after this, if you want to stay tuned, you can. We've got a really long interview that was later on. I'm going in chronological order here rather than skipping back and forth like I normally do. So this is going to just give you an eye on when he talks again, because he loves doing interviews. There's another interview after this that's long, and just keep these things in mind, everybody. That's why we're watching them, so you can keep them in mind.
You should not believe me. People have been killed because they believe me. There was a victim in a car who let me in because I was believable. So as you watch this, the pull to believe him, the pull to trust him is going to be there. That doesn't mean that everything he says is a lie, but it also means that he is doing to you exactly what he does to other people, which is make them think he's a nice guy. And that's exactly, he knows how to do it. He's very good at doing that. Let's go back and watch this clip again. I'm going to show what emotions come out.
One victim let me back in the car. I locked myself out. She opened the door.
See the eyebrows raised. Now, this is surprise. When we feel intense shock or surprise, when we think back on those moments, our eyebrows raise because we do a similar expression to what we do when we feel shock or surprise. So even he was surprised that somebody let him back in. Let's watch that again.
One victim let me back in the car. I locked myself out. She opened the door for me. My gun was under the seat. What in the hell am I doing telling you that? Am I a masochist? Am I looking to be tormented further?
And then there's anger that comes across his face right there, right in his brow. Now, the question is this a bit of a performance? Is this part of him drawing people in, saying, I'm telling you about the truth of how bad I am. Therefore, you should believe what I'm saying further. Why am I telling you this? Really, even saying that may be part of his manipulation. This is going to get a little bit confusing in this way because you want to be able to believe, like I said, what he's saying, because it sounds like he's being candid. And I think that there are definite truths in what he says, but I think there are also manipulations that we're going to get to. So I just want you to keep that in mind. He is a confusing person to watch.
Now, for Dr. G, he's confusing. For us, we just think he's a psychopathic killer that does these things and then kind of is bragging about him. That's how I see it. I feel like he's telling us and he's bragging about it and he's smirking to this man because he's talking to this large man in this interview, not to Dr. G. He's talking to this big man with large puffy hair and he's trying to intimidate him in a way is what I feel like.
I also want you to keep in mind the savagery of what he did. If you're not familiar with what he ultimately did to his victims, the crimes that he committed are about as heinous as you could possibly imagine. If you want to read up on that, that's up to you. I won't force everybody to listen to the kind of details about the things that he did, but truly, he is as heinous as any serial killer that has ever lived, and that's the truth.
Agreed.
I'm trying to show you just how awful this got, how commanding.
And you saw a very brief smile again. Now, this is a little bit harder to see, but watch his mouth here.
He enjoyed it.
I'm
That's
trying
why.
to show you just how awful this got, how commanding. And outside, I looked troubled at times. Other times, I looked moody. Other times, perfectly serene. Not very sane.
And here's the smile again. It's interesting. Whenever we start looking at these killers, they always have certain tells. It seems that for him, he probably feels an exuberance that's a little bit hard to hide. When he thinks about the idea that he pulled off being normal in front of other people, he finds this amusing. This is such a funny idea to him. Watch this part again.
Other times, perfectly serene. Not very sane. But again.
So when people smile, we want to mirror that. That's just how we work neurologically. So when you see somebody talking in this way, and they're talking about, well, I wasn't very sane, unconsciously we recognize, okay, well, he recognizes the problems he had, and he's smiling. So it makes us more comfortable with this. It makes us forget what a monster he really is for just a minute.
I was also involved in killing co-eds because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds, women, and had a very strong and violently.
Now, something I want you to keep in mind, he has serious issues with feeling sexually repressed. So he has to find some reason why he would go after college co-eds, rather than it being because he's attracted to them, rather than it being his own internal challenges with this, he has to attribute it to his mother. Now, I want you to keep in mind, he has come back after the murder and basically said, she was the reason I did all this. It's all because of her. You got to keep in mind, psychopaths externalize all blame. I think that there were a lot of ways that she was very awful to him, but that doesn't mean that she is actually the reason.
Agreed, because if you missed that part that he killed his grandparents, he did kill his grandparents. Hey, McGregor, good to see you. I don't know if I've seen you in chat before, but that's awesome that you're here. Keep watching the content. It's going to get better. My internet's going to get better, my resolution, and just everything in general. And we're going to have a nice crime crew here that can agree to disagree about things. Okay, so everybody that's coming through, keep coming back.
Reason he did this, even if that's how he wants to frame it. So he may be saying things here that sound plausible, but in all reality, it's far more likely that he went after these women. Maybe he found them because his mother worked at a college campus, but it was his own impulses and desires that drove him to this. It had very little to do with his mother, I imagine.
Co-eds, because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds, women, and
see, after he said women, he smiled again. There's part of him that feels confused, conflicted, excited by all of this.
Had a very strong and violently outspoken position on men.
And then he does feel genuine anger if you look at his brow when he thinks about his mother's position on men.
For much of my upbringing, my mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman.
Now, all of those things may be true, but I still don't think that that's the ultimate core reason behind why he committed these killings.
I hated her, but I wanted to love my mother. They represented not what my mother was, but what she liked, what she coveted, what was important to her, and I was destroying it.
Why did you actually kill the girls?
My frustration, my inability to communicate socially, sexually. I wasn't impotent, but
so right here he is acknowledging probably much more.
By the way, they're toning it down a little bit, everybody. They're talking about him being a serial killer, but if you go back to the beginning of me talking about this, he actually was a necrophiliac too. So he killed. Necrophilia means you like to have sex with dead bodies, so he would kill them and then have sex with them. It's not like he was just killing them and then going and doing his thing, which is still very bad, but he was sexually frustrated, and rather than the naughty R rape word, he didn't rape them when they were alive. He killed them and then had sex with their dead bodies. So yeah, he's just twisted all over the place, and there's no way you could blame your mom for that, dude. Go to therapy.
More of what is the reality behind why he committed these murders. Once again, he'll oftentimes tie it back to his mother, but it probably has a lot more to do with this right here, as well as an insatiable desire to hurt, a curiosity and confusion about humans. As I talk about many times with these serial killers, they don't see people as people. They see them as literal objects, because the way that he treated humans, even after they had passed, there's no other way to describe what he did other than literally seeing people as just objects. They were not humans to him like they are to you and me.
Emotionally, I was impotent. I was scared to death, and I was in shock because of that. I couldn't believe that it was that way. And I'm walking back there bewildered. I got to kill her. I can't let her go. She's going to tell on me. Everybody's going to get me. She sees the blood on my hands. What are you doing? She pulled back and she gasped. And I think, whoa, I don't want her to know what happened. I said, your friend got smart with me.
So now we're seeing something a little bit different. I talk in many videos also about how people lick their lips when they start feeling excited or when they start feeling nervous. I don't think that he's feeling nervous right now. I think going back here is exciting to him because he is talking about the things that he did. He's talking about times where he had intense control. Watch this right here.
I don't want her to know what happened. I said, your friend got smart with me. She'd been getting really smart with me a lot. But
now you're seeing him go right back. The way he's talking, I think that that's exactly how he said it. His brain is being transported exactly back to that moment. So you saw him briefly lick his lips before he jumped directly into dialogue that was probably verbatim exactly what was said at that time.
Awesome, Dr. G, man. Dr. G is great. And now there's people that have commented on some of my videos and said, this isn't real, this isn't actual evidence. And it's not. It's just us hanging out and breaking down our thoughts. We watched the video first. Now we're watching him break it down. So it's just behavior patterns that you can see in people that are in everyday life. So watch this kind of stuff just to give you a good idea. Should I be with this person? Should I be going out with them? Should I get in the car with them? Look at human behavior. It's a good thing to do and it helps. This doesn't help in court though. I'm going to say that right now. None of this is going to help in court, although he may help behind the scenes and assess people.
I never hit her. I killed her, but I didn't hit her.
Now watch his brow and his mouth right here.
I don't want her to know what happened. I said, your friend got smart with me. She'd been getting really smart with me a lot.
See, your friend got smart with me, eyebrows raised. And this way, it means emphasis. He wants her to look at him. He wants to feel important right here.
But I never hit her.
And he says, I never hit her. He gets angry at the idea.
I killed her, but
And then he smiled when he said, I killed her.
I didn't hit her.
But then didn't hit her and gets his brows look angry again. It's a very interesting mix of emotions going on here. But look at the half smile when he talks about that he killed her.
Got smart with me. She'd been getting really smart with me a lot, but I never hit her. I killed her, but I didn't hit her. I said, your friend got smart with me and I hit her. I think I broke her nose. You better come help. She's about to die. Why does she have to know that?
And once again, there's a faint smile. And I don't know if it's hard for you to see this, but there's a faint smile. So the idea that he's going back to these moments and that he acknowledges the heinousness of the crimes he committed and he keeps saying they're awful, I think he still feels joy and pleasure and feels excitement talking about and thinking about what it is that he's done.
It wasn't that swell a knife anyway. I went out and bought a pawn shop, huge knife. And
all right. You saw the big swallow after that.
All right, we're listening to what he said, and we've been watching him for a while to know his body language. Thank you, McGregor. If you send me an email, guiltyofcrimebyj@gmail, or you can check out any of my, if you go to my page, hit me up on Facebook where everybody else does in the DMs. And yeah, let's talk to each other. I have Carly helping me out, and I know she's busy on Fridays, and a lot of times I go a lot of hours. So let's talk, man. Let's go.
He's talking about the knife that he used. He's talking about having a big knife and thinking about the things that he did with it. The unconscious mind is a powerful thing. So even if those specific images aren't coming to mind right now, he's having to swallow because it is, once again, exciting for him. Watch this part again, then we'll keep going.
Huge knife. And I kept on just mindlessly attacking. I thought I was pretty slick and went and tripped all over myself. That first two murders, the first 24 hours, there were 3 clear times I should have been busted, and I wasn't.
So when he talks about this, once again, him talking about the vulnerabilities he had, him talking about the times he could have been busted, all of this stuff, this once again makes people want to believe him more because he is allowing himself to seem vulnerable, to say, look, I screwed up. And that's something that he does to draw people in. Probably the same tactics he's used throughout his life to manipulate people. And it works. It works really well. Just like if you think back at the very beginning of this video, the other person they interviewed said, yeah, I like Ed Kemper. And so you got to keep in mind that he's so much more manipulative than you might pick up just watching him talk, because he is interesting in that sense. Some serial killers, people are immediately repulsed by. They don't even want to see them talk. When it's somebody like Ed Kemper, because the way that he is open about what he's done, the way that he talks about that it was bad, the fact that he turned himself in makes people want to believe him more.
So this is the same as Jeffrey Dahmer, everybody. If you watch the Jeffrey Dahmer stream, we saw him talking candidly about what he did, and he tried to say that he just needed help. But Ed Kemper, what I didn't tell you earlier, is he's similar to Jeffrey Dahmer in the fact that he did the things that Jeffrey Dahmer did. He would kill animals. He killed his cat because it got too much attention over him. He got more attention. The cat got more attention than his sister, or they gave the cat more attention and the sister got more attention. So he killed his cat. He liked to play with dead things, just like Jeffrey Dahmer. And the same Jeffrey Dahmer also was a necrophiliac that dismembered bodies and decapitated them, and he kept the heads as company. He wanted to keep them forever. The only difference between him and Jeffrey Dahmer is Jeffrey Dahmer was a cannibal. He liked to eat his victims, and this guy didn't eat his victims. So let's keep watching.
To the campus, I was picking up some very lovely young women.
You hear the chuckle again. I was picking up some very lovely young women.
Yes, access day or night to the campus. I was picking up some very lovely young women.
The reason I keep pointing this out is that you have to keep in mind how much joy he gets from what he has done, even if he isn't saying that, even if he's saying what I did was wrong. He can't help but feel excited by it.
You know what we were talking about is
Juror 13, message me. You're right there down there. Go on my Facebook or my email and message me. Juror 13, I'll give you my text. I'll give you my cell phone number. You can text me. I just don't want to put it on all over YouTube. But yeah, hit me up, Juror 13, for sure.
Driving around.
And there's the smile again, if you didn't notice.
Some very lovely young women. You know what we were talking about as we're driving around, almost as often as not, this guy that's going around doing this stuff. And the second they started talking that, they didn't realize it, but they were getting a free ride.
This is interesting because if you've been following the Rex Heuermann case, there is an escort who basically said that when she was with him, he was talking about this exact thing. Do you know about the escorts that are getting murdered and all of this stuff? So this in some ways very much reflects a current case going on. That being said, Rex Heuermann has not been found guilty. He very well may be innocent. He's just a suspect, or he's the prime suspect at this point. But it's interesting the potential parallels there. Let's watch that again. We'll keep going.
You know what we were talking about as we're driving around, almost as often as not, this guy that's going around doing this stuff. And the second they started talking that, they didn't realize it, but they were getting a free ride.
So how come they get in a car with somebody at that time?
She judged me not to be that guy.
I think we're really starting to see that he smiles whenever he thinks about the fact that he stayed hidden, that he would fool people. To him, that just seems endlessly amusing.
With somebody at that time.
She judged me not to be that guy. I didn't look like him. It was getting easier to do. I was getting better at it. I was getting less detectable. I started flaunting that invisibility, severing a human head, 2 of them at night in front of my mother's residence with her.
And another parallel with the Heuermann case is that it's been alleged potentially the victims were killed at his house. And the parallels don't stop there, aside from the fact they're also very large men. I did a video talking about this, but it's very interesting.
See, we have more parts. It is very interesting, Dr. G, because we could do serial killers all day long. Now we're doing all of these top 10. We're on number 4 serial killer, but Rex Heuermann is actually a serial killer as well, but it hasn't been solved yet. So if anybody's interested in that, please Facebook me or email me and let's talk about other cases, because right now it's Carly giving me the information and just people that I see on the channel here and there, but I need more content, y'all.
To hear this, it's also interesting to see how much exuberance he is showing through his smiles as he's talking about what he did.
Severing a human head.
I think it's hard to keep in mind the reality of what he did, because it's not that unusual that somebody could talk about something horrible happening, that they could potentially have a smile on their face, but he actually did these things. He probably has visual images as he's talking about this, and he can't help but feel joy and to smile when he thinks about it.
2 of them at night in front of my mother's residence with her at home, my neighbors at home upstairs, their picture window open, the curtains open.
Why did you keep the heads? Why did you cut them off, and why did you keep them?
Something out of my childhood.
So he's attributing to why he keeps the heads to something from childhood. Keep that in mind as he talks through this.
I could put it on an incident. I mean,
so he laughs as soon as he starts to think back on this incident, if you notice that.
My father chopping the heads off of our 2 pet chickens and my mother insisting that I eat them for dinner. You know?
Now, the interesting thing about the way he's laughing, this is a genuine laugh. This is not an uncomfortable, sort of shaky laugh. Like he is amused.
This was the good part, everybody. So let's focus in on this. I'm going to stop typing in chat right now. I really want to hear what he has to say, because when we watched this earlier, when he talked about killing his mom, it's making me want to laugh right now. And it's not funny because, like, I love my mom, love her. She's my best friend, but it makes me want to laugh looking at this guy's face talking about how he killed his mom. Now, he did kill his mom and then he chopped her head off, and then that's not the clinical term. He decapitated his mother and he necrophilia'd her, if you know what I'm saying, everybody. So let's listen on this, or listen close.
Amused by this. And when you think about when we talk about trauma, it's not impossible that people laugh when they talk about something traumatic, or that he tries to see the amusement in it. But I want you to keep in mind, this is truly an unusual response with what he's talking about.
We could say it was something that simple. I don't think it was.
So think about the context here. He's just being asked about why he collected heads, and he can't help but let out a laugh. Now, part of what he's doing is telling a story from his childhood that I guess he could say that is amusing to him, because he's talking about how cruel his mother was. But I really want you to keep in mind that sometimes when the really savage things get brought up, he does smile, he does laugh. This is someone who is just as deranged now as he was when he was free. Let's watch this interaction again.
I could put it on an incident. I mean, my father chopping the heads off of our 2 pet chickens and my mother insisting that I eat them for dinner. You know, the stairs with a camera bag that belonged to a young woman that had her severed head in it. Walking up to my apartment past a happy young couple coming.
As he's talking about walking past a happy young couple, I know I hate pointing out just smiles, but it's so important to who he is, because the more he thinks about getting something by people, the more he thinks about staying hidden, the more excitement and the more happiness it brings him. So you have to keep in mind, in the context of every interview and everything that he does, he is telling people exactly what he wants them to know, because it brings him great joy to fool and manipulate people. So you always have to keep that in mind when you are watching Ed Kemper talk.
Down the stairs, who nodded and smiled at me as they went by. Good evening. And they're going out on a date where I'd love to be going. And I'm aware of both of these realities, and the distance between those two is so.
And there you see, as he's talking about the different realities, that someone's going out on a date and he's not. You see the anger on his brow right now.
Yeah, look at it. I'll keep it paused on the brow right now while I'm actually talking. And we're here for a while, so whoever earlier didn't want me to talk during it, I'm sorry. I can throw some links in there and you can watch it. Hello, Lala, Juror 13, and Crystal. Dr. G is not related to the Dr. G mortician. That was a good question, though. Dr. G mortician is it's true crime analysis, and I believe they're on YouTube, but Dr. G dissects interviews, and the other Dr. G is a mortician, likely associated with the field of mortuary science, and the other one is forensic pathology. So 2 different ones. I would love to check out the other Dr. G mortician. I like watching those shows too, when they break down the evidence and they do autopsies, and I like to get really deep into this stuff. Some of it people don't like on YouTube, but I like it. So let's keep going.
Now, he does feel angry about this. I think that's something he would probably acknowledge too, actually.
I walked up to her bed. She's laying there reading a paperback. As many thousands of nights before.
There's the lip licking again. We see this so much with serial killers when they start talking about the things that they did.
She's laying there reading a paperback. As many thousands of nights before. And she said, "Oh, I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now."
Another thing Ed Kemper seems to do is that when he talks about things that happened, he does seem to, in a very real way, go back to those moments when he's talking about what his mother said. I imagine similar to what he said when he was getting ready to murder those college students. I think this is exactly what his mother probably sounded like. It seems like he does have a very good memory, and I think that he really is impersonating these people in a very real way.
And she said, "Oh, I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now." I looked at her, I said...
There's the smile again. Even with tears, he is still smiling. So the question is are these tears real? Is he affected when thinking about killing his mother. It's very possible. I'm not saying
It is interesting because earlier I made my own opinion on that. Now we're going to hear Dr. G's. I am not a clinical psychologist, so let's hear what he says, because this is an interesting part, talking about his mom laughing and crying at the same time.
that they definitely aren't. You don't see any actual tears roll down, but he could be holding them back. But I do think that he is feeling joy when he talks about this.
No, I said good night. And I knew I was going to kill her.
And there he is covering his mouth. Now, watch this right here. Now, it's not unusual that we cover our mouths if we're crying or when we're trying to stifle something. But I do wonder if he knows that he's smiling, if he is putting on a performance, because he is in absolute control of the narrative. He wants to fool people. He loves to do this. That is evidenced throughout this interview. He seems to feel joy and exuberance when he talks about fooling people. When he talks about the murders, he also smiles. This is someone who has the capacity to feel very deeply. And so I think right now he might be covering his mouth because even if it's unconsciously, he has a certain way that he wants to come across. I don't think this is shame over crying. I think it could be a way to stifle that smile.
And I knew I was going to kill her, you know? And it's so cold, it's so hard. And that's the first time in 10 years I've looked at it that way. I mean, that intensely, that honestly.
And he wants you to know how honest this is. Watch this.
Looked at it that way. I mean, that intensely, that honestly.
So he's raising his eyebrows when he's saying that honestly. That doesn't mean that what he's saying is more true, but that's what he wants you to pay attention to. He wants you to focus on the fact that he's being honest, or so he says.
It hurts. Because I'm not.
So he said it hurts, and then he starts smiling. Once again, this is someone who is fooling you right now. This is someone who has a performance that he's putting on, and he is just loving it.
A lizard. I'm not from under a rock. I came out.
I'm going to go ahead and stop this part right here because he does go on to talk about what he ultimately did after he murdered his mother. And I don't think anybody really should have to listen to this just so that you.
Wait, we did listen to it. We already heard it. Dr. G, we want you to break it down. Come on. Let's see what he says.
You can learn more about Ed Kemper, but just understand the body language stays the same and it gets very, very disturbing. There's a lot more footage of Ed Kemper that we can go over later on. I'll probably do more videos about him because he does talk in a lot of detail about what.
All right, everybody, guess what? We're going to go over more whether he likes it or not, because we just watched his channel and that was really cool, Dr. G. I'd like to have you on here one day as a guest, and he's on a lot of channels, actually. I see him all over the place, people bringing him on. Duty Ron loves to bring him on, and Duty Ron is a New York cop, and then it's Duty Ron and Crime Time with Ed, so he's actually a forensic guy. And so those guys are serious crime people. They're in, cops and CSI. They like to know about the the psychologist, the psychological analyzing, because it helps them to hone in on suspects and know if people are lying and so forth. So although this is not used in court, everybody, it is used to approach people, a suspect, know if they're lying right off the bat and all that fun stuff. So we're going to bring him down. Apparently, what Ed Kemper said is too graphic. We are hardcore over here. That's right. And Sadie's mama, thank you. You emailed me under the other email. Thank you. I'm going to go through those. I've been trying to get back to people, and then people tell me they're going to email me on the channel. I don't get it, so I'm not sure. I will check that out, and I appreciate that, Sadie's mama. Also, yes, we are hardcore over here. Let me tell you something before we get to the next one that give you time to shift. So, not this case, but let me get this out of my face. It's bothering me. We've been doing the Maddie's mom, okay, Madeline Soto, everybody. So if you're here, you've already heard about Madeline Soto because you've watched how many videos we've done, and I was debating on reading the affidavit. I was going to actually read it, but I had to think about it for a night. So I read it, I thought about it, and I actually had a nightmare about it. I had a nightmare that, or what I was reading. I have a 9-year-old daughter. So after reading it and completely having a nightmare about the affidavit, I am very hardcore and diehard. I'll use all the words and so forth, but I don't think anyone really needs to hear that. If you want to read it for yourself, if you can get through it, I just don't want to disturb people. I disturbed myself with that, so I had to take a breath today. Wow, eating your pet's possible chaos. Yeah, we're in the middle of taking a break and talking to you guys, but we have another video for whoever's just chilling out, painting, eating weed gummies, or drinking Kool-Aid. Possible chaos go bad. Psychology of one that's turned interesting. Had a friend killed and someone's daughter by another serial killer. A small world we live in. Absolutely a small world we live in. It's so small, McGregor, that I'm right here where this happened. So I would be apprehensive about, I'm in San Jose and this was in Santa Cruz and this guy's in Vacaville prison to this day. He's still serving a sentence. I would be apprehensive. And he killed women in Berkeley, which is where I got carjacked like about 13, 14 years ago. So it's such a small world that it's all in like right around me with this happened. So I'm always keeping my children safe and I'm very much overprotective, but because it's a small world and all this is happening and has happened right around me. So sending my daughter to Berkeley would be a joy. It's hard to get into, but it's also scary. Even in Santa Cruz, it's like a hippie town, and look at this stuff that's happened. So what do we have here? Lala, have you ever noticed that these monsters talk freely about adult victims, but shut it down when the subject of children victims are brought up? You know why? Yes, I do. I do know that. And, Richard Ramirez was the same way. He actually, we do Richard Ramirez yet? Well, we haven't done the Night Stalker yet. I was trying to get Zab to do it with me, but she's busy with her own stuff. So I'll have to just do that myself. Richard Ramirez, if you didn't know, he was a serial killer in Los Angeles in the 80s. And before he started killing adult women and random people, that's all he did was he would kidnap children from the room, sexually assault them, and then take them back. He didn't even kill them. But they decided not to prosecute Richard Ramirez because they didn't want the children to have to relive the situation. Now, the monsters that you're talking about, these people that don't talk about it, the reason they don't talk about it is because the people in jail will want to kill them. There's an off-limits thing to what you do, and what you don't do is harm children. Sometimes women, it's supposed to be women and children. That's like a gang thing, but in jail, children is a big no-no. So, yeah, we're crossing all these. We're still talking about serial killers. Richard Ramirez is on my list of the top 10. Ed Kemper was number 4. Eileen Wuornos was number 2. Ted Bundy was number 1. So anyway, I have a list of them. Ted Bundy, number 1. Jeffrey Dahmer, number 2. Eileen Wuornos, number 3. I'm doing Ed Kemper now. I've got John Wayne Gacy. I've got Ed Gein, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Richard Ramirez, Dennis Rader, Zodiac Killer, which is right here in San Francisco, never solved. I'm here in San Jose, David Berkowitz. So that's my list that I still have to do. So you all know we are on 4 of 4, and I promised all 10 of them. So yeah, in between that, I'm also covering the current cases and going back on. I'm just deep into it. I thought I was only going to make 10 videos and then just walk away, but look at that. I can't stay away from this because that's all I do all the time is just watch this shit. I gotta be mindful of my mental health, especially with that horrible dream I had. So now that we're talking and stuff, we're going to keep going. So if someone got on here, I have a 1991 interview of him, which is pretty bad quality, but look at how, look, hold on real quick. You're going to see how much different and much more creepy he looks. So let me tell you this, that last interview was, let me tell you, the first one we watched was 1984. The one that Dr. G explained was 1984. Now I want you to see this one. It's 1991. And I want you to see how much different he looks. He's been in prison for a while in this and has been cogitating on what he's done and probably in a different setting. He seems to be more beat down, and you can tell that he's had a lot of gel food. So let's play this, and we can stop and talk in between. And whoever wants to go, happy Friday, everybody.
Junior, je viens pour tuer la preneuse de sang.
What is this? There he is.
That would include serial killer, obviously.
Yeah, but obviously very few of them could if there was
Yes.
only 35 serial killers.
No, they're talking about close to 100
Here,
right now.
I was saying that 10 years ago.
That wasn't John
Because
Douglas,
you also have to include. No, I'm saying and his cohort.
Okay, but do you see how much different he looks than the first one, everybody? So that was this is 1991. It's the extended interview with somebody else. The first one was in, what did I say? The first one was 1984. So this was 7 years later. He looks like a different person, and you can see how big this guy is. So, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
They were saying as a unit. The BSU was saying. And having come from that genre in the having been locked up and through the dregs and knowing some of those characters and watching how it was for me to stumble into what I did. I didn't go into it pre-planned or anything, but I couldn't believe that was a unique act. You know, that no one else could find that out. And that's just one avenue into it. Because, you know, while a lot of people can stereotype the type of criminal that a serial killer would be, society has to loosen up its belt a bit and admit that jailers, like at the Tucker farm down in Arkansas, who get tired of recalcitrant troublemaker inmates, take them out back and kill them and bury them, are serial killers. Different motive. But, so, you know, it's a wide range of activities that get included in something like that. They've had that 100 years ago in the Old West, where someone would set up a boarding house and people who came by never left. Whole families, individual travelers, would go on for years before they'd get discovered.
This guy just loves to talk, and I love to watch serial killers talk. So now that we know what he did, decapitation, necrophilia, and dismemberment, keep that in mind while you're watching this, the kind of guy he is.
But these things I've read about.
Yeah, you had H.H. Holmes also in the 1890s stuff. Yeah.
Poisoners, people like. Are we starting our interview or?
No,
Good question.
Oh, yes,
He's
I'm
like,
doing
"Are we
my time,
starting
I'm
it?"
miserable, and they say good.
Do you hear that? That's funny, everybody. He said, "Are we starting the interview yet?" He was very ready to talk about his killings, and it had been 7 years since he had done an interview before that. So he's excited. So we're going to watch this together. I have not ever seen this.
You know, that's not what it's about.
Huh?
Uh-oh, we're getting serious now. I can tell.
He loves it.
Could you tell us how long you've been in prison?
Excuse me. This month is 18 years that I've actually been in prison.
What were you convicted of?
8 counts of first-degree murder.
What was your sentence?
7 years to life. CC, that's called concurrent. It means all the sentences run at the same time.
That means they run consecutively?
Oh, no, that's the opposite of consecutive.
Yeah.
Consecutive would be one at a time, and of course you can't serve multiple life sentences, but there was some question before my case that whether on the legality of that. So when my case went through, the judge sentenced me to 1 term of 7 to life, which at that time was the maximum non-death penalty, and all to run concurrent at the same time.
In considering your crimes, and crimes done by other serial killers, what do you think society should do in generally with serial killers?
Do with them?
Yes.
It's a difficult question to answer from my point of view because I'm obviously an involved subject. So it would, any answer I would give that would be other than the death penalty would sound very self-serving. I look at people who, on the surface, don't have any redeeming qualities whatsoever. They don't do anything or say anything or behave in any way that would make your average person want to save their life, want to keep them alive, and feed them and house them and clothe them for decades. But when I first came to prison, I had much the same attitude. It was a very defensive attitude, very self-preservative attitude, because those immediately about me were very much set on destructive.
He almost doesn't look like the same guy. It's weird watching this, and then watching the video before. I mean, I know people age, but he looks almost like a completely different person. If I saw him side by side, I wouldn't even think that was him. That's how different. I mean, he's got the mustache and he's huge, but he just looks so different. Let's keep watching.
Attitudes toward me, so I put up screens, so to speak, to screen out those feelings. Excuse me, and those reactions to me. I'm driving your sound lady crazy here. Over.
Also, when you feel you need to redo an answer, you can do it. You know, it's
I don't have any problem with that. No. I understand the problems involved. I had to do a whole interview over once because the lady wouldn't check her audio tape recorder. I kept saying, you better check it and make sure it works first. Oh, I'm sure it works. It works. 2 hours later, we're doing it all over again. She was ready to cry, I'm telling you. I guess I could have, but that was where the pen was mightier than the sword, right? The only interview I did.
I definitely think he likes hearing himself talk and bragging, and he's pretty bored in jail. So he wants to be out there, but I love serial killer footage when they actually will talk to you. Richard Ramirez didn't want to be on camera. He let them record him, but then he said, you better delete this when you're done. And they didn't. So we'll have some sound to him, but he was a monster, Richard Ramirez. And I lived in Los Angeles from the age of being born until 14. And that happened in the 80s. So I was like 7 or 8. And we lived in an apartment in the Los Angeles area. So that was scary. Anyway, let's just keep watching.
Back at the time of my case, this is just a little anecdote for you here. But I went through the whole investigation, the whole trial, no interviews with the media, right? And then this one woman who had treated me pretty fairly in the media, she was in this, were driven toward beating me with the newspapers. She tried to do a more in-depth piece around it. And
sorry, guys, hold on. I must have hit a key thing trying to talk with you guys. And it's Chill Friday, so, you know, I'm in chill mode.
Actually, wait a minute, excuse me. That was where I gave her the interview. Okay, I talked to her just briefly. She came, she was hovering around. I was at the jury room, to the courthouse, talking to my lawyer. He hadn't shown up yet. She was up there talking to the officer that was with me. And we all just had I said, my lawyer does not want me talking to the media at all. So like I seen him come down the hall. I said, let's set up a little scenario and act like I'm giving this really incriminating interview that screws everything up, right? And she kind of laughed because it was breaking the tension in the room, you know. So we set up this little scenario, and she's busily acting like she's writing, and I'm talking about all of this harebrained stuff that relates to the case and feelings, and he just starts turning bright red as he gets within hearing range. He's like a big clown, got this huge forehead, hair standing out all over, and now he turns bright red.
And he says, "Mattered in a wet hen." And he stomps into the room and slams his briefcase on the desk. And we all start laughing. And he gets really mad. I said, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "This is a setup just for you." So I'm not doing any interviews. But later on, I gave her an interview because she'd treated me so fairly up to that point, and also had she gave me a pen that day. It was a cast aluminum ballpoint pen. And I took it back to my high security jail cell up in Redwood City. I was really slammed down tight. I'm in a 2-man cell by myself. They have a camera on me 24 hours a day, a monitor, videotape monitor. The lights are on. It's 2 sets of these 4-footers here. And it's as bright as day, all day long, all night long, 24 hours a day. And I was there for 5 months. And I brought this pen back in. I smuggled it in with me. And I get strip shook leaving the cell. I get strip shook coming back in. And I brought this pen in, and it got in with my legal papers. And a few months later, in the middle of the trial, I smashed the pen on the floor with my boot, sharpened it, got a sharp edge on the metal, and slashed my wrist, and was bleeding all over the place. And it was very messy and very exciting, and everybody was dragging me off to the hospital, get sewed up, and all of that. And I got maced, shot up with industrial strength bottle of mace. They had about a quart of it, and they just gassed me with that whole thing, and dragged me off to the hospital. And I made a quippy comment. I don't think the police translated it properly for the media because they missed it. They love, how they love to get into puns on broadcast television. They love these little verbal puns and plays with words. And the pen is mightier than the sword. I turned the pen into a sword and cut myself. Both times I attempted suicide, I did it with a pen or parts of a pen. And I thought that was kind of interesting, but
do you think that he really tried to commit suicide, or was he just putting on a show, everybody? I think he was just putting on a show, and he's having fun telling it. If you remember what Dr. G said, he's talking about him and how he laughs and smiles and smirks. We're not even going to get into that body explanation on this video. He's just having a good time, and he's bored in prison, and he's talking to us, and he's a psychopathic, narcissistic serial killer.
The media never picked up on that. They were too busy being serious. But at any rate,
at one point,
once in my life, I could see every aspect of my life, my crimes, who I was, how I really felt about things, without any defensive or protective accoutrements, was all gone. And it was fascinating to me. I was semi-conscious. Actually, I was conscious. I just, I couldn't get up and move around a lot. And at the end of the 2 hours, I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep on with this. I hadn't gotten to the crimes themselves, the current set of crimes, but I was kind of oriented around other things related to my life. And I asked to continue on. The doctor didn't want to, so I insisted. So they were using an IV, and they shot me up with another 2-hour batch of this stuff. And as soon as he was done with what he wanted to do, he got up and left. He had an appointment. It had gone longer than he planned on it. He had to leave. My lawyer had to go. So I'm stuck with these 2 deputies and a registered nurse watching me until I come down off of this stuff. Well, when the doctor left, he decided to give me a shot of medicine to snap me out of this, is the way he put it. And I asked him what it was, and he said it was methadone, hospital-grade methadone, speed. And I've asked doctors since then, both medical doctors and psychiatrists, if that was an appropriate action. And they said, absolutely not. They should have let me sleep it off. Just let it course through my body and let it go away. By amplifying with the methadone, it is suggested that the doctor knew full well it would put me through hell. It amplified everything I was feeling. It got me really drove. And for 2 days after that, they were trying to scrape me off the ceiling. They couldn't even talk to me. I was raving, I was ranting, they had to put me in a strip cell. I wouldn't go back to my regular cell. I refused because there was television available there. I had a canteen, I had some food items in my house. I wouldn't accept it. And I went to a strip cell.
If you missed it earlier, most of you are still here. This guy is 6'9" and 300 pounds back then. Now, when we saw him the first time, he was 6'9" and 300 pounds, but that was 7 years before. And you see how much bigger he is now. So could you imagine trying to control this guy to get him out of a cell, into or out of a cell. That would be really freaking hard to do. That's a huge motherfucker, man. All right, let's go.
2 cells down, where all I had was a mattress over a hole in the floor. And I was just on and on 24 hours a day. The convicts and the criminals in the back that were locked up with me, they were in the tank. I mean, we were talking very casually about different things and fairly good relationships. And I put them all on what we call Front Street. I exposed all of them to all of the negative sides of our relationships and called them all kinds of cowards and punks and this and that and the other because they were even talking to me. And that was when I made the statement that I should be hung upside down on the bars and beaten daily, right, for what I did. Because under the influence of those drugs, I was seeing what I did through other people's eyes. Not through mine. I won't say through other specific person's eyes, but as someone else would view it. Pure horror. Someone that had nothing to do with violence in their life would see it. I was completely unprotected, and that was an awful experience. And within hours of coming down off of that stuff, 2 days later, you know, I wasn't making comments like that. The defenses were back in place. They were a bit ruffled. It had been an eye-opening experience because it gave me something I'll never forget, you know, some perspectives on my case that I'll never forget, some anxieties on my case I'll never forget. And all I can give you to gauge it by is that when I went into that hospital, the nurse came out, and she was the typical battle axe professional nurse, been on the job 20 years, great woman with the wheelchair, severe stern face, and she's looking at me with razor blades. She could just dice me up in a second without thinking about it. She's really having fits. You know, I'm in the chair, she wheels me inside. 5 hours later when I come out of there, you know, she's wheeling me out. And as I'm getting into the car, I got this tortured look on my face. I've been crying, I've been tearing at myself. And she looks at me with this very compassionate look and she says, good luck. Because she got a good look at what was really inside. That she was already aware of the evil I was capable of and the horror that had happened in the case. And now she saw a lot of my real feelings. And her knowledge of chemicals and medicine and treatments and all of that, she knew I wasn't faking. And from her, I got a good luck, you know, and she was serious. Never seen her since. But then ironically, the deputies that were stuck with me that day, trying to wait out this fit I was having, this rage, because they hadn't anticipated that. But they just tried to figure, well, we'll keep, he's so outraged right now, he's so drove. Let's just keep him here until he calms down a bit, and then we'll take him back to jail. But I didn't calm down. It just kept going on and on and on and on. And at one point, I asked the deputies to handcuff me to the rails of the bed because I was afraid I would rip my eyes out. I was really acting up. And he had known me well enough for a few months. He didn't want to do that. He says, oh, come on, Ed, that's calling him by my first name. He says, that's not really necessary, is it? And I said, man, you better put him on or I'm going to tear that goddamn gun belt off of you and blast you. I might beat you to death with it. So he comes over with the cuffs. He's a little offended by that. So he comes over with the cuffs. He starts to put them on my wrist. And I just went through some kind of incredible convulsion. I just yanked him clear across the bed, you know, in and out and yanking like this. And he had the other hand cuffed already. He's putting cuff on here. And I yanked him across the bed and zing, off he goes. He's hanging onto this handcuff. And at that point, he cuffed me up real quick, finished. I already had leg irons down at the foot of the bed. And I just was yanking those rails up and down with my wrist. And that's very painful with handcuffs on, you know, these stainless steel rails, just up and down, yanking them.
Yeah, this guy definitely is just bored. And I left this up for a while. McGregor, he's bored and he's the narcissist. So he just likes hearing himself talk. And we're just listening to him and everybody's chatting. But I'm going to check out my emails after and check my settings. It's weird that Facebook's saying that because all you have to do is send me a message, and everybody sends me messages through there. I talk to Carly and Anthony and Marv and all the other people message me just fine. So I don't know why, if I got a restriction on Facebook, everybody, that's weird. Yeah. Sadie's mama, if you tell me what your Facebook is, I will send you a request and then I'll check my settings again while we're watching this. But I see some new friend requests. Let me check it out. That's really weird. Let's keep listening to this fucking 7 foot tall, probably 370 pound fucking serial killer. Excuse my language. Sorry, not sorry.
and trying to pull him in. And we went like that for a few hours, and finally they said, we got to get him back to jail. He's not going to change in the near future.
In general, people see serial killers as one category, but there are actually 7 different types of serial killers. Would you care
Several
to...
or 7?
No, several.
Several types.
Would you care to explain us what types of different serial killers?
To be honest with you, I couldn't really tell you. Because the categorization process, as you know, is back east with the behavioral sciences unit. When I was locked up originally, they called it mass murderer. Anybody who killed more than 2 or 3 people was a mass murderer. And whether it was all at one place or over an extended period of time. And then in the early 80s, they came up with this differentiation called serial killing, which was living 2 lives, basically. If one orients to the negative side of that living.
Now, just so you know, the person that coined that term serial killer was Ted Bundy. They didn't have that. And when he tells you that it was, did he say the 80s? They didn't come up with that with Ed Kemper at all. They never called him a serial killer. He's now a serial killer. But yeah, it was Ted Bundy that got the name serial killer because he was so interesting. Go back to my video playlist and watch Ted Bundy because we're doing Ed Kemper right now.
He would say this person was living a cover life that was wrapped around doing those crimes, and which couldn't be very realistic. Someone doesn't live their life to murder people. Their life was not set for that from birth. From my point of view, what I saw was there was a great hole in my life. There was a lot missing from my life, and it didn't necessarily mean feelings. It meant I had walled off this emptiness in my life. Okay, I had an upbringing that was some have called dysfunctional. Okay, parents divorced when I was young. My mother started drinking heavily. She was working to raise 3 kids. We were not being cooperative about it. She drank more. She punished us harder, probably out of desperation. So character sets were being developed at that point. Rather than me going to Boy Scouts and getting achievement badges, I was not going to Boy Scouts and not getting achievement badges. I was finding devious ways to get around the rules of the home, because the whole home life, I watched it deteriorate from what typical kids on the block were doing to coming home from school that I didn't like anyway. And ironically, I have a high IQ. I didn't know that till I was locked up the first time for murder. I always thought I was a little missing up here, a little short.
You think?
Because I was always called stupid. I'm called slow. Don't you think when you do things? That was the problem. I wasn't thinking when I did things. I just did by rote. I did by memory. I did by example. And I had absolutely no faith in myself at all. I had no interaction going on in my own mind. I was not a thinker. I was not an individual. I had a teacher in the 9th grade who changed all that. He made me think. He would not tolerate my not thinking. He was an art teacher. And it was a devastating experience for me because there were gears in my head that were just rusty and they were barely moving or not at all. And that's when I found out that's what the state of my mind's functioning was. I didn't
guy
to the point of he points at us.
I don't know if you all notice. I mean, you guys are here watching serial killer Ed Kemper tonight, but if you watch other serial killers, they're all very similar in liking to tell stories. And by the time they've been in prison for a while, they definitely justify their behavior by using terms that their psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever diagnoses them, that's their justification for it. So they never take responsibility for it. And when they do, later on, they have justifications and they always give it, they give the names, they term it with a name. So it's really interesting to see how he progressed from his first interview to this one and how he's talking about himself.
Stapler on his desk and says, "What does that say?" And I looked at it, I said, "Silver line." He says, "Look again." And he's raving at me. And I looked and it said swing line. All I had to do was look at it and read it. But I glanced at it and threw it back at him out of panic. So he made me think. And he gave me puzzles to work out in school in my class where I had to resolve these to continue on with the class. I had to think. I had to use abstracts. And after that started,
that became fascinating to me. So I got more and more involved in thinking and about my surroundings and things like that. But by then I was locked up.
But what was your relationship with your sister?
Which one? I have two.
Yes, the one you were playing strange games of death with her, with one
My
of your
younger
sisters.
sister, yeah. My older sister was 5 years older than me, so she was off with her friends and in a distant relationship. My younger sister's 2 years younger, and I developed some morbid games. My life had started going that way at about 8. We lived in a house where there was a basement. Some people think there was a trap door on that basement. That's not so. That was a different
Maybe he'll talk about killing the cat. I've never heard him talking about it, but he did kill their cat because he was jealous.
It was a walk-in basement, but it was in Montana. It was a full basement, had granite walls, hewn wood floorboards, and it looked like some old dungeon out of a castle or something. I was 8 years old, 7 and a half, 8 years old, and then I was very susceptible. My imagination was very vivid. And there was an old furnace in the basement that had been converted from burning coal to burning, and coal and wood to burning gas. And that was, it had a central heating system with your typical radiators. And if you've ever lived in a home like that, you know, the binging, the clang, the pop, the rattles, the weird sounds in the night that can be spooky to a kid. Well, at a certain time of the evening, the family left the center room, the living room of the house. My mother and my sisters, or my sisters themselves, would go up to bed upstairs, where I used to go to bed upstairs. I had to go down to the basement. And an 8-year-old child had a tough time differentiating the reason in that. Why am I going to the basement? I'm going to hell, they're going to heaven. Earth is the living room. I'm going down to deal with demons and monsters and ghosts and all the things that scare me. They don't have to. There's a house with 3 women and 1 male, 1 boy, me. And I got a little defensive. I'm saying, gee, this is kind of ganging up. My older sister had a basement bedroom, okay, and it was a storage room that was about 18 feet wide and 35 feet long, okay, and it was a concrete room, no windows. And it had a light bulb over a big industrial iron sink, you know, like a laundry sink, and had a pull string on the light. The bed was in the opposite corner of the room. It was a double bed, a single bed. And I had a dresser halfway. I had a couple of carpets thrown on the floor, old carpets, and there's a lot of storage stuff along the wall. And I was there about 6 months in that room. And I developed some very, very particular and articulate rituals that I felt I had to go through to protect myself. I was like, again, it's embarrassing. I was a youngster. And if you can imagine me going down a staircase of rough hewn wood,
this is like he needed to get it off his chest. And I wonder how many times he's told this story. He's actually telling it with his hands and storytelling. So it's interesting when you watch Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, they're just very still like this. They're not animated, but they do always go back and justify what they did. He's straight up storytelling right now. This is interesting and calm at the same time.
There's no guardrail. So one step wrong and you're off into this black pit. I turn on the light. It's a little circular light switch. And a single naked bulb goes on down at the bottom of these stairs. Okay. So I turn that light on. I open the door. I close the door because my mother complains of the cold.
I bet you he thought about throwing his sister or his mother down those stairs a few times. What do you think?
Cold coming in from the basement. I go down the stairs. I get to the bottom. I do a 180-degree turn, and I walk the full length of the house on this floor. These pipes rattling and wheezing and banging over my head. It's pitch black ahead of me, and the only light is behind me, hanging down from the ceiling. I'm now cut off from the house, cut off from them. I walk this full length into the darkness, from this gradients of light into complete darkness, groping around in the dark. I do about a 45-degree angle when I get to the end. And I pull the string and it lights up this end. And then I'm supposed to walk all the way back to the other end, turn that light off, and now walk toward the light from the dark. And I've got this horrible terror going on inside of me. And this is every night. This is every day because it's pitch black down there, no windows.
She didn't intend all of this. And when I sniveled about it, when I complained and I cried about it, I got smacked in the head. You know, what's the matter with you? Quit being such a wimp. And she, you know, she was trying to solve a problem. She had not enough room upstairs to where I didn't have to share a bedroom with a sister. I'm 8 years old. I need to go to the basement.
And what were those morbid games that you played with your sister?
Ooh, this is going to be interesting.
Well, the one I remember.
Poor sister, guys.
Talking about in a
wow.
book was one that was playing gas chamber or electric chair or something, and we had this big old overstuffed chair up in my room, and we'd it was not just my sister and I.
That's creepy.
And a friend, close friend. We got into all these games. We got into one game where we'd roll up in a rug.
I bet you did, dude.
Get out of it. It's just like a large throw rug, and it was I guess. What fascinated us individually about it is it was a completely, it broke up the monotony, I guess, of what we were doing. Didn't have a lot of toys to play with. We got bored with those pretty quickly. So we looked for things to do. You roll up in the rug and you try to get out, and the other two would leave the room and we see who could get out fastest. You know, you try to work your way out sideways or scoot out.
Wow, those are some creepy games, y'all. That's really freaking creepy. That rolling up somebody in a rug is like a typical scenario when you know, when you kill them and you need something to take the body out so people don't see it. And then also the way he was talking about wiggling out, it's like if you tie someone up he was practicing for his future killings. So weird.
Out the end of it or whatever, and went from that to being tied in this overstuffed chair with a cord or something, or pieces of sheet or sash or something, and went through this process. I guess that's back in 1960 when Carol Chessman was executed down in California. We're up in Montana, and so I got there's a lot of media coverage on that because he was an author. He'd written books. They're trying to save his life. He'd not killed anybody. Why are they executing him? And so that's, I think, where the fascination with that came in, that gas chamber effect. And I think it overly fascinated some people in relation to this case because it seems so obvious a piece. You know, I'm preparing my mindset for doing deathly kind of things.
Another obvious piece would actually be, I don't know if the story is true, that you beheaded one of your sister's doll and cut off the hands of the doll.
It's interesting you bring that up. I had a cap gun. It was by Mattel, right? Fanner 50. It was a very fancy cap gun. I got it in New York City. I went there for one summer with a cousin. And when I came back, my sister was kind of jealous, my little sister. For years, I never really put any value on what happened. Tried to, you know, figure out beyond the obvious what happened in this scenario. But I've since found it plausible to believe that when she was angry or jealous about something, she would fuel her attitude toward resolving something. She hated that cap gun because it came between us as brother and sister. It was something I had that she didn't have. That trip represented something she really wanted, she didn't get, and I did. But very soon after getting back from that trip, she got in an argument with me. It was over something really petty. She got really outraged. She picked up that cap pistol. I said, "Don't throw that." And she threw it right at me. Wham, hard. It hit the floor and my toe, and it hurt bad. But it broke the...
I'm pausing it real quick because everybody's having trouble. Yeah, messaging me. I'm going to create a new Facebook channel. I'll update you in a day or two. I'm going to go ahead and block mine out so nobody else can message me or answer me or go on there. I didn't realize I was going to even get this much traction or users that quick. I was kind of just talking to the screen. So yeah, we're not going to use that, but yeah, thank you, Carly, for saying that. And let's keep watching this.
Gun, the inner mechanism, it wouldn't work after that. I picked it up, I found that out. It wouldn't cock and pull the trigger anymore. And that really outraged me. So I said, "So you want to play like that, huh?" So I go running into her room. She says, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" She's shrieking and chasing me, right? So I run into her room and I grab up her Barbie doll. It was the one fancy doll she had, the Barbie doll. Everybody has one, right? She had a pair of sewing scissors sitting there and a sewing machine, a sewing kit. I grabbed the scissors out. The head didn't decapitate, it pops off. So I popped that off. I said, well, that's going to go right back on. That's no damage. So I took the scissors and I cut the hands off the doll. I said, here, now you got a toy that doesn't work too good. I got a toy that doesn't work too good. That was my attitude. It wasn't quite just me going and, dismembering her doll. Again, I think that's a little bit too quick an assignation. It's not me to judge.
This is very telling, everybody. I've never heard these stories before, and he's talking about this just like crazy. Yeah, I'm gonna just change my whole Facebook. So we're gonna make a new one for the channel in a day or two. Let's keep listening to this. It's very telling. But yeah, I'm not gonna change the name. I'm gonna do a whole new one because yeah, I don't want to show all I have up.
Here on Monday morning after the football game, and they say, gee, here's all these little parts of the puzzle. Oh, this indicates what he was going to do. And if that's the case, I want to know about the teenage kid or the preteen kids and the puberty, the pre and post-puberty kids. They're going through these raging moods and attitudes that go out and kill neighborhood cats. They hang them up from a telephone pole or hang them up from a tree, shoot them full of arrows and set fire to them. I was reading about that in Dear Abby. Where are those children today? Are they serial killers? Or are they police chiefs and mayors and aldermen and assemblymen?
But
I'm saying there are periods when kids go through very violent development into, potentially violent. They break things, they steal things, they lie, they go through these changes. Yet I've had these people, one or two doctors in particular who I won't go into, who very casually just slapped all these assignations on her and said, well, of course, if you run into a kid that's doing this kind of thing, you've got a developing serial killer, you better put him in treatment real quick and save his life, right? To a point, I agree with them that someone who's acting out and has a dysfunctional childhood or has just gone through a dysfunctional childhood and hasn't gotten violent yet or is heading toward that direction, passive-aggressive. Violence was the last thing I exhibited, and then it was murderous violence, okay? So sure, there's a lot of value in getting youngsters like that help to where they can find themselves and they can find value in themselves.
Yeah, people don't do that and then kill people. You're right. But he definitely, you can tell he's been institutionalized. And this is 7 years after the first interview. So he's just talking from the things that he's learned from all these clinicians that he talks to once a week and all these guys in the jail cell to justify that he really just likes killing people, everybody. He likes decapitating them and he likes having sex with dead bodies. Let's just be real. And then he likes dismembering them. Maybe he doesn't like it, but he has to when he kills them. But I think at some point they find a fascination in it and even some kind of joy in being able to control people. So it's very interesting. He's repeating himself. He's just really talking about himself and what he's learned about himself while he's in prison and what the doctors have told him. But this is still a good interview, so hang in there.
And they can find value in interacting with others, and they go in a different direction than what I did. But to just sit there and casually lay these. It's I guess that bothers my ego. I don't know that these people have not worked with me year after year. The psychiatrists and psychologists I deal with are in a prison setting. They're there 8 hours a day. They have to deal with me every day. If I am their patient and I screw up, they can kiss their job and goodbye. They're going to be a lot of hell on them for not seeing this in advance and saying, oh, we should lock him up.
He's just talking what he learned from them.
And any psych out there, any professional out there is going to tell you, I think, that if they are going into my mind, into my past, into my feelings, that there's a potential there for acting out or getting uncontrolled or being violent because they're stripping away the veneer of my civilization. They're stripping away the veneer of the protections of myself. And there's a lot of things that can come jumping out of there. And then to walk out of that therapy session into this kind of a setting, prison, where it's very violent, it's very aggressive. It's a distilled kind of medium that you might encounter on a street corner somewhere, the street corner thug, the street corner punk, or the alleyway where someone is going to take terrible advantage of you or put you in a terrible situation that you may have to be violent to get out of. That's this main line. I mean, that's where all these guys go. And I'm going to walk out of a therapy session where this man has been peeling my mind, so to speak, and getting into my psyche and my soul and finding out what makes me tick, or trying to help put me back together, or help try to put me together for the first time. And then I'm going to walk out of that into this medium. That's not very conducive to good health. I'm aware of that going into the situation. So I'm twice as leery as the doctor is. But unfortunately, he's got all of these mindsets and these theories and these books he's read and that he's trained under. And I guess what has happened to my life kind of jumps out of the book a few chapters ahead. And the way I've experienced it, the psychs don't want to go that far. They don't want to come out there and work the pages back into the book so that I fit in there too, or my kind of criminal fits into there too. They kind of just stand on the edge of the book and they put on their feathers and they put on their paint and they get their rattles and then they hop around and they go into the witch doctor routine. And that I resent, and unfortunately so do they. When they have to put on their rattles and put their crosses up and say, he's evil, get him away from us. He'll take advantage of us and he'll rape, pillage, and burn, right? So guess what? That's where I'm on the cutting edge of humanity. I find out now, and it doesn't matter that I find this out because I've already been cast out by society. So any things I find out or discover, or even beautiful little things I discover about the ability of the human spirit to heal itself, just to an extent enough where he can make friendships, he can form bonds, he can cry when someone dies of AIDS, or he can feel bad when a friend gets injured or killed by someone else. See what I'm saying? Or grows old and dies, unable to go back out to the streets because they won't let him out early and he's dying. That kind of thing. And the feeling that develops, it can develop hard, wicked feelings. It can develop some very tender and some very sad feelings. And then you're trying to deal with the widow of that man through the mail, the very restrictive mail procedures we have here. See, we're not supposed to co-correspond across these lattices of relationship. It's tough to deal with, but you know what? That's my world now. That's what allows me to be sane. Let's call it quote unquote sane. That's what allows me to function as a human being, is not doing time with these incredible constraints that I've caused to be on me, right? It's my life, right? With the limitations that I've caused to happen. Living my life is different than doing time, because then there's the ability to work into that picture positive things, giving things back, like working in the Blind Project, the Volunteers of Vacaville, where we read books on.
You know what's interesting is that he is not even being, he does think he's sane, but the funny thing about it is the guy that's interviewing him is not really taking advantage of taking control of it. He can sit there and take control of this and ask him questions, and he's not. And yeah, thank you for people are still here. We are up to like 20 people, and then people are dropping off because this is kind of putting me to sleep too. So that's why I'm talking with you and interacting and trying to check my Facebook. I'm going to create a new one and make my other one private, but my Instagram and everything else should be just guilty of crime, and then my email guiltyofcrime@gmail.com. So we're going to stay with that one. Everything's going to be consistently guilty of crime and the J Scott. So thank you guys for chatting with me and hanging out. This is the first time I've watched this. I know it's getting repetitive. The guy should ask more questions.
On the tape for the blind all over the United States and sometimes in foreign countries. I participated in that program for the last 14 years. I started out very, very little involved in reading books.
Why are we paying for this guy?
Baseballs for blind sports. Doing some clerk work, working on their newsletter, and different jobs in there. Become the reader supervisor, teaching guys how to read the books onto tape. And all the way up to the point where I became the inmate coordinator, which is the lead man there. It's the guy that's in charge of making sure everything works right all the time. And when I first went into that activity, they were saying there were things I couldn't.
If you guys had the chance, we're all on YouTube, and there's Carly's always on a lot of channels. Carly, you can answer this. If you had the opportunity to interview freaking Ed Kemper, this notorious, infamous serial killer, wouldn't you be asking him questions instead of letting him ramble about himself and these clinicians that are telling him whatever or God knows what in these stories? This is crazy. Like, I don't know exactly where this footage came from. It's weird because it's on different channels and you can see the subtitles are in a different language, but he's just going on and on. I can't believe they're not taking control.
Never do. To ask you a question about your interview, did you see a trophy case when you came in?
No.
Yes. Out in the foyer, there's a trophy case. Take a look at it.
You had to think
There's
about
several
it.
trophies in there, and a couple of them have my name on them. And the reason is, I'm asking you that. There's a
Tell
big
us.
40-inch trophy.
Tell us, Ed.
Triple tier trophy. Very impressive looking.
You're giving me a headache.
Volunteer of the Year award. Okay. And it has a little speech on the front of it on a brass plaque that says, this award is given to the person who most epitomizes what they stand for.
Wow.
The help, the service, the handicap.
What a good guy, Ed
visually
Kemper.
impaired. And this is a very
Giving back to the community.
time-honored award. Okay, they've been in existence
This
now
guy.
for 31 years. I've been
These
in that group
ridiculous
for
guys.
14 of those years.
Put him
And
down.
the first couple of years I was there, I used to like, the trophy case used to be in the blind project.
Put him to
and I
death.
used to walk up and I'd look at that trophy, and I'd never had a trophy in my life. I'd never had a ribbon. I'd never had a plaque. None of that
Oh,
stuff. I'd never tried for it.
Well, you had the Junior Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, yeah.
oh my God.
From
Actually, I
Atascadero.
forgot. They don't call that though.
Oh, yeah.
They had to get rid of that name because the Chamber of Commerce took offense to that.
Can you believe what he's saying right now,
JCs.
guys?
Yeah, United States JCs. And at one point was the
What?
youngest JC in America because I was 19 when I was put in as a.
He's never gotten an award, guys. He's only gotten an award being in prison after serial killing 10 people and having sex with dead bodies and dismembering them. But he got an award in jail, everybody. He's helping out the community, but he's heavily weighing on our taxes.
Associate member who couldn't vote. And by the time I was 20, I was on the board of directors. Yeah. Okay. No trophies, no plaques, anything like that. I got some certificates. But that was, again, that was in the institution. That's where I'm learning to achieve. I developed a better image of self and those around me. And I really started cooking. I started doing things real positive. I felt good about it.
At least he didn't cook the
And I
bodies.
continued on to the streets. I went to the JCs on the streets. But as my relationship, I was paroled to my mother, okay?
Oh my
What
goodness.
these experts don't notice.
Okay, I almost lost track of what the hell he was talking about, everybody. So he was talking about getting an award when he killed his grandparents. He was 15. He killed his grandma and grandpa, his biological grandma and grandpa. So he got an award when he was 15 after killing his grandma and grandpa. My dog wanted to say hi. So poor guy. I didn't know that. So that's what he's talking about. I lost track for a second.
In the picture, I haven't seen it in writing anywhere. It could be
Really?
somewhere. That when I was 14 years old, I ran away from my mother. They mentioned that. But if you look at it in the overall picture, why did I run away? I wanted to be with my father. That's a very topical approach to it. I wanted to get away from my mother because I was dreaming, thinking, fantasizing murder all day long.
Wow.
I couldn't get it out of my head. She and I couldn't battle with her because I was very intimidated by her. She's 6 feet tall. She weighs 2 1/4, 225 pounds. She's not a fat. She's just this great big woman who I was terrified of. She had verbal capabilities you wouldn't believe. I used to watch her field strip grown men in emotional little contests. And when they get to a point where they wanted to smack her, then she started attacking them on beating women. Oh, slap the woman around, you know, and then she'd toy with them on that. And I'd watch these guys dance around the room, having fits, knocking out windows, punch a hole in the door and stomp off. And she could control people like that. I'm sitting there watching that in awe from the one point of view and in terror from the other. I grew up with this stuff. She did that to my dad when they were always battling before the
Crazy.
divorce.
Okay, now we
I'm not
know.
trying to put on her what happened to the girls or to her, but I'm saying there was a lot of psychological involvement there.
Did you feel it on?
The legs. One time I turned around shrieking and she hit me in the mouth, and the little keeper on the clasp flew off, little silver buckle thing. And she smacked me. This thing breaks off on my mouth, right? And she hits me across the face with this belt and says, "Shut up. The neighbors are going to think I'm beating you." I'm looking at her.
Well, guys, I've been hit by my mom, and yeah, we were raised that way, but nobody decapitated theirs and then had sex with the head freaking guy.
What? You know, I'm not supposed to cry out, which is a natural reaction to these great red welts that are going on me. I was a little shit. I got rude downstairs. She took me upstairs and beat the hell out of me. I would like to think it was a better part of my character that was resisting this kind of pressure to fit into some mold that she had the image of as being the good little kid. I'll be damned if I'm going to be that good little kid. I'm getting the hell beat out of me for not being that little kid. I don't know what you call it, resistant to it. But again, it's not in manly ways or in prideful ways. It was sneaky.
I wonder how many times he's told this story. It's like he was getting frustrated. He's told it so many times and he keeps reliving it. This part got interesting though. For a while I was bored. Actually, I was like, what is this guy saying? He's just talking about nothing, but at least he's telling us about his mom and the woman that he decapitated. And we know a little more.
Devious ways I can get around that. And one of the ways was she won't give me an allowance. I'll take money out of her purse. I never robbed her, took all of it. I'd take a dime here, a quarter there, 15 cents there, 50 cents here. She comes in drunk at night. She's not going to know how much change she has. So to rebound on that, she started counting her money at all kinds of odd times to keep on top of me. And it was like a game we played for years. At the age of 13, she finally lets me go visit my father, down in LA, where I was born. I'm in Montana where she was born.
LA.
I don't like Montana. It's cold in the winter, it's hot in the summer, it's miserable, and the people up there are nice people, but hey, they're not my people. That's what I'm saying now. I wasn't viewing or voicing those things then. I was feeling them, but I didn't know how to put them into words. So I finally get to come down and see my dad again down in LA.
At least we're getting a backstory.
I never touched her purse again. That scared her. That really bothered her because she'd beat me halfway senseless with that belt, trying to impress, and in terror tactics. Okay, we're going to eat dinner and I'm going to beat your ass afterwards, so I can think about it for a half hour. Or after some little thing she's doing. And she tried psychological tactics. She tried, I'm going to put you in an orphanage, I'm going to disavow you, and none of that shit worked. So I go see my dad for 30 days. And my stepbrother and I, we go out and mow lawns. We say, gee, Dad, you're going out to dinner tonight. Can we go someplace and eat? And he says, sure. He'd give us a few dollars. We'd go down to some little diner down the street. He treated us like little men, like he wanted to be treated by he came from a matriarchal household too. I guess if you know how that stuff runs in families, right? Matriarchal household, the son goes out and finds a mother image and marries her. I didn't know all this stuff back then. It would have made a lot more sense. Right? But I got this domineering grandmother on my father's side. I got this domineering grandmother on my mother's side who died before I was born. But now she's reincarnated in my mother and her sister, my aunt. They're two very domineering, very aggressive, very successful women. Okay, so these two women are in terrible conflict with each other, competition, and they didn't get along at all. All right, so I'm in the middle of that, trying to find my way. And I go stay with my dad, and I can only say he reflected back on his childhood and said, gee, I wish I'd been treated this way. So that's how he treated me and my stepbrother. And we responded to that. If we needed spending money, we would go out and we'd do tasks around the neighborhood, clean yards, rake this, mow that, water the flowers, and make a few dollars, and we'd have some fun. Okay, and then sometimes he'd ask us to do something. We'd do it because he was always fair with us and kind, and he was generous with us. So 30 days of doing this opened up whole new feelings in me that I'd never had before. And I wish I'd had more experience with my father growing up so I could orient more to being tall around not tall peers. There was I call it an artificial paranoia that developed. When I walk into a room, everybody stops and looks at me because I'm the tallest guy they've seen or the tallest guy in the room. They stop and they look. And ironically, the average or short guy is sitting over there looking at me with great resentment because he wants that attention. I've got it. He thinks it's really neat because he's looking at it from a vicarious position. He doesn't realize that there's thorny sides to that attention. I don't want that attention. I want to just blend into the room. I just want to kind of sidle in. So I see two kinds of tall men or tall male or tall female personalities. Those who are very passive because of all of this thrust on them, or who are very aggressive and they use that and they apply it towards ends. You know, like the little guy who goes out and becomes the bank president and he's the champion.
Now he's just going on and on. But thank you guys for still watching here, staying here and watching Miracle Hearts too. Carly, I'm talking with Carly right now as we're doing this. We're trying to set up stuff. I just bought a bunch of new stuff for the channel to make it better and more high definition and less interruptions and stuff. So hang in there with me, everybody. We're going to have some fun here.
And did that, never saw the fourth grade. Yeah, because he's real aggressive because he's denied all those little attentions. He has to grab them and he has to go out there and put himself in the limelight. I get it naturally, so there's resentment. And little guys tormented me all the time I'm growing up.
Did you feel like an outsider, an outcast early on?
I always felt like an outsider, and it's again because I didn't ever fit in. I'd moved around a lot, for one thing. I went to different schools when I was in Los Angeles from age 5 till 7. When I'm going to kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I got in trouble in public school. And I look fondly back on those times because that's when I was acting out and I was normal. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I went around and kidnapped people in classrooms or broke windows out.
I hope not.
Like that, but I was
damn, dude.
And I was messing around and I was recalcitrant. I was getting bad marks for it. And my parents were getting called by the PTA. But you know what? That's a hell of a lot better than a few years later when I'm real spooky and I'm real quiet and nobody ever hears from me and I'm in school and I go home.
Ed.
Very few people knew me because I'm in that basement and now I'm pulling into myself and now things are getting very morbid in their orientation. I start becoming fascinated with things evolving around death and destruction and evil and all of that. I'm not saying I became a Satan worshiper because I didn't. I was afraid of evil things, afraid of those powers that we all don't understand. And as a little kid, I had a very, very strange orientation to those. I mean, it wasn't rational.
What was your fantasies at that time? Morbid fantasies?
Good question, dude. Finally he's asking a good question.
At what, about age 8 or 9?
Or later on,
whenever
you said you were thinking all the time about death.
What I was fantasizing about, I was building up big loads of frustration inside, big loads of hatred, because I had no outlet for it. I should have developed outlets, but I didn't know how at that time. So the outlets that developed themselves, or I developed without knowing it, were fantasies about me being the last. I got that out of a school book, this thing of being the last person alive on the world. And the thing that was posed to me in this textbook was, it was social studies, and it was meant to play upon the loneliness youngsters can feel, and that it's a very uncomfortable feeling, and you can't have love, and you can't have adventure, and you can't have excitement without being able to share it with other people, because that's where a lot of the dimension comes from. Okay, so they posed this thing at me, well, what if you were the last person in the world, and you had all these cars and airplanes and boats and ships and things to do, but nobody to share it with, right? Wouldn't that be awful? And I thought, hey,
fucking weirdo.
I never thought of that before. So it became a seed, like a little core to fantasies for me.
Absolutely.
Some mysterious thing is happening, everybody else is gone, and I got all these things I can do, and no inhibitions, no restrictions. I can do what I want. I don't get yelled at anymore. Okay, that soon became very hollow. So I built upon that and added to it. Well, people were still around, but they were inanimate. They couldn't affect me. They couldn't hurt me. And then it went further and further and further until finally, by the time I'm reaching puberty, I'm approaching puberty, and I'm.
He said puberty, and hey, Jay number 1. I'm Jay number 2. I got the number 2 spot, everybody. But hello, Jay from Intertwined. I love talking with you, and I hope to agree to disagree with you at some point, because that will be fun. But so far, everything you say makes so much sense. When you did the bullet and you showed the markings on the bullet and the box and the manufacturer, I was like, that may be what they have on Richard Allen. Actually, it may not even be the slight markings that we keep talking about. We're just speculating, right? So Intertwined, go follow Intertwined on YouTube, guys, because he has a lot to say. All right, let's keep going.
Starting to sense myself, and I've already been accosted by a girlfriend, not sexually, physically, but emotionally. She's trying to, she was a little ahead of me. We're the same age, but she was pretty aggressive, and she's a beautiful young girl. But I wasn't ready for that kind of relationship, and I was scared by it. She kind of cowed me into backing away from the relationship altogether, because she wanted to get physical. She wanted to kiss and to neck and to smooch.
God forbid.
Imitate what she saw in older kids. And that kind of terrified me, because I didn't understand the feelings inside.
At one point, your sister teased you also about a woman school teacher. And you said, if I wanted to kiss her, I'd have to kill her first.
Yeah,
wow.
that had been you can imagine how that goes, the deep, dark secrets that one sibling shares with another. It's troubling inside of me. So that was from that period, that more advanced period where people were still there. They just weren't animate. They could not react or respond to what I was feeling or what I was sharing, because what I was sharing was very embarrassing, very humiliating. It's hard to talk about now, really, because it's obviously it affects how a person feels about himself. But it's not too hard to get around that, because then I look at the wreckage I have behind me, the dead people, caused by my self-indulgence in fantasy life.
I was just about to say that. Oh my God, Jared 13. I'm sitting there doing other stuff, obviously, because we've been here for 2.5 hours, and I'm having a blast hanging out with you guys. I love you guys. I love all of you. You guys are the day oneers. I only have a handful. So when I do my Guilty of Crime day oneers hoodies, the handful of people that are day oneers are going to get one. But I think we're going to call it the Crime Crew when we get monetized, and we have the little $1.99 things where you get special behind the scenes footage and stuff like that. I'm going to definitely take people shooting with me and things like that. But I think the Crime Crew is good. And also you get to wear Guilty of Crime. So you're going to walk around and people are going to look at you like, guilty of crime? You're what? You're guilty of crime? Am I guilty of crime? Did I not get caught? Anyway, yeah, Jared 13, he's totally just lying and going on and on. I had to stop it and look up at it and be like, what the hell is he talking about? He's like, I don't even know. He's just getting it off his chest, everybody. Let's listen.
And then my self-indulgence in not doing something about it, like getting help or taking action against myself even. A lot of people committed suicide at early age, and they don't understand why. And a lot of times, again, by troubled parents and school counselors, they'll water it down into, well, he couldn't adjust and he was having a difficult time, so he took his life. I would not want to say too casually that they're probably pretty lucky he did. Not in every case, not even in most cases, but in some of those cases, you might have had some very inwardly violent young people that they had, on the one hand, prospect of they're about to act out, and on the other, in a very violent way or a very unsocial and socially abhorrent way. And on the other hand, they keep holding it in, and they say, I can't do that. So they, sometimes they kill themselves. I played with death. One of my favorite tricks back then was to go out and lay in front of in the cars, in the traffic. I'm walking down the sidewalk with a friend.
Too bad he didn't get hit, huh?
And we're clowning around about something. I'll say, hey, check this out. And I'll go lay in the street. Like a
damn, you could have got hit.
And a car comes driving by. And of course, I'm expecting this guy isn't drunk. I'm expecting this guy isn't slightly demented and say, hey, there's a kid laying in front of me.
Can you imagine if he would have got hit back then and killed? Like, there would have been 10 more people alive in this world. 7 of them that went to the Santa Cruz University women that would have had babies and husbands and so forth. So we joke around, but we're losing track. You know, we're not losing track. We're listening to this together, but I sometimes lose track and whatever. He did kill 10 people, and what could they have been today had this guy just got hit? And yeah, we could save money now even by executing this freaking guy. He's just sitting there on our dime, on my dime. I'm in California, and so is he. All right, let's keep going.
Me, yeah, it's his fault. Thump, thump, just shift gears going over me. They always stop, and they jump out of the car and get all upset when I get up and walk off or run away.
Right.
And but it was like a little game we played. He didn't go lay in front of the cars, though. I was doing that. I laugh now because it's.
He was telling you to kill yourself,
it indicated, bro. I think, how little I thought of myself. I think it indicated that a part of me would rather I got run over right then than I pursue what I was continuing to pursue in my.
We wish you did too.
Life because looking at myself and how I was developing inside, nothing good could come of that.
And you had also a great admiration for John Wayne at the time.
He looked a lot like my dad. And he acted a lot like my dad. My dad was kind of a big, loud guy. Actually, John Wayne was 6'4", had very little tiny feet. My dad was 6'7". He had little tiny feet. And you notice how comedians, when they imitate how John Wayne walked, there's this rambling thing with the hips waving, and they always do this trick. You ever wonder why? He didn't just pick that way to walk. I found, quite by accident, that very big men with very little feet, who have abnormally small feet, have a tough time balancing, and it's a little balancing act they're going through. I went to Grauman's Chinese Theater after it was renamed, and I went and checked all those different footprints out, and here I'd grown up as a kid, not a very tall kid, looking at other people being like this, much shorter than me. In my mind's eye, it was all balanced, and when I saw pictures of other kids in me, or other people in me, and there's this great difference. It was always shocking to me too, because I never saw it that way. But here I went, and I watch all these movies and TV programs, and I see these people as being bigger than me because I'm a youth. And then I go to this physical exhibit where it shows their foot size. And I step on John Wayne's boot print with his cowboy boot, and my shoe completely covers it over. It's gone. When I was 14 years old, I had bigger feet than he did. When I was 14 years old, I had bigger feet than my father. I was 6'3½". He's 6'7". He works on a construction site as an electrician. I'm going to junior high school. We go to Kinney's. We get the same kind of Oxford shoes, black Oxfords. I wear a 14½. Excuse me. I wear a 12½. He wears a 12. All right. In the mix-up of getting up and going to work and going to school in the morning, he comes running around the house looking for his shoes. He grabs mine. I can't find mine, so I go running around the house and I grab his. And all day long, I'm walking around these pinched feet. I got blisters developing. He's flopping around at work. Half the size too big in his shoe, and he says, "God damn it,
Ed.
got my kid's shoes again." And they're all saying, "Gee, Big Ed, your kid you got his shoes on and you're flopping around in them," and he thought that was great. Well, that was a big laugh, right? Hey, I was kind of proud of that too, because it's following in Father's footsteps. When I was 14 years old, I put his old Army jacket on, his Class A uniform. I put his jacket on, and if I had pulled my...
What is he even talking about at this point? Like, is he telling a boohoo story? Does anyone know? Master of physics. Yeah, right. He's talking to his imaginary friend Bob, and this guy interviewing him is taking no control. So he's just talking and talking. Crazy.
My shoulders forward, I would have ripped it right up the back because I had broader shoulders than he
You're
had.
so tough.
My
and
head's
big.
larger than he is.
You're a big guy.
I wear an 8 3/4 helmet.
Oh, look at you.
8 3/4.
Good job, Ed.
Quarters is very big. It's hard to find a helmet like that.
And actually, what's strange is that another serial killer from Santa Cruz, Herb Millen, grew up hating John Wayne, actually.
I wouldn't blame him. I was in a jail cell right next to him for months, and I was in prison up in the hole here in the lockup unit for going on 3 years with him, about 2.5 years. And at one point, I got him a job in the kitchen. I was already on the kitchen crew, and the sergeant pulled me aside and asked me to talk to the guys about him coming on the crew because he'd alienated other guys. They'd be violent.
So I talked to them, and there was no problem. So they brought him out to the crew. He worked a few months. He goes to the main line. I'm still sitting in the hole saying, geez, what happened here? And, you know, I knew Herbie. And I
No, we
don't call
don't
him Herbert
know.
Mullen. And of course, I
I
don't
don't
call
know.
myself
Oh,
Edmund Emil
Herbert
Kemper
Mullen.
III either. I never heard that in my life until I was locked up for murder, right?
He's also a killer too. Ed
But little
Mullen. I
Herbie
look him up.
was, when I met him in Redwood City Jail, okay?
Yeah, I'm near
Our
Redwood City
first
also.
meeting was I bumped him out of the priority cell where they could look from the office and see through the steel door, the glass in the door, and see him physically, or they could watch the monitor.
Now that's where these guys get excited when they run into other infamous killers. So this is kind of cool listening to this because Herbie Miller is also another. I'll look him up, but he's also another. I don't know if they classify him as a serial killer. He's not very infamous, but he is a killer. And Redwood City is also right here. It's about. We'll just say everything's about 45 minutes from me. How about that? Let's keep listening.
And watch him. He got bumped next door. There was a shower in the priority cell. Never had to leave the cell. For him to shower from the other cell, he had to go out into the main area. They had to lock everybody in one of the, I guess you call them tanks. They moved 15 guys, 30 guys out of the tank into the activity area. They'd walk him around into their tank. He'd shower. He'd come back out. And all the way over there and all the way back, they're catcalling him. They're calling him names. They're yelling because he caused them great interruption in their day, right? He resented that. He got bumped out of the priority cell into a non-shower cell. I got the shower cell, right? So he wasn't too friendly.
So it's actually interesting what he's talking about. He's talking about Herbie Miller, and I just looked him up. Yeah, it's 9:00 over here. It is probably like midnight over there. Herbie Miller, who he's talking about, was an American serial killer who killed 13 people in California, which Redwood City is right up the street for me. This was in the 1970s, so that's interesting. I didn't even really have Herbert Miller or Herbie Miller on my radar. He did it in Santa Cruz Mountains as well. So wow, something to look into. That's funny that he's talking about him though.
At first.
Bored.
And I'd say, excuse me, Mr. Mullen. I says, do you have a bar of soap? There's no soap over here. He took it all with him. He had no need for it, but he took it with him. And he'd say yes. And I'd say, well, can I use a bar of it? He said, no. And I'd say, oh, I got one of these little shits here. And what it is, he's a little wimpy guy that hates big guys because he always feels intimidated by them, right? And that's how we started out. So I started thinking about that, and I went back to my old relationships in therapy and group therapy and Tascadero and youth authority and stuff, and I'm saying, okay, well, we can deal with this. So I said, well, I have to be kind to him. So I found out something he liked. He loved Planters peanuts, little bags of peanuts, shelled peanuts. And so I bought 20, 30 bags of them. I didn't care for them myself.
He's so bored.
And I offered him some one day, and they were both on camera 24 hours a day. So I said, Herbie, would you like some peanuts? And he'd say, yeah. And I say, oh, I got to it, right down to the inner core there. Yeah, this little childhood thing comes out. I says, oh, here. And he was fascinated by this thought of, gee, he's just giving me some peanuts and I didn't do anything for him. I don't know him, not being nice to him. Why would he give me some peanuts? So he comes over to the bars. We can't even see each other. And I reach out with these peanuts around the side, and I see this little hand come out. And I thought of it almost as a little monkey paw. That's what it seemed like, so innocent, and this little hand comes out, starts to reach for the peanuts, and then he hesitated. And he pulls back. And I thought, oh, geez, he's defensive. He's thinking I'm going to grab his hand and rip his arm off or something. I'm this great big guy, right?
Straight
So
up
without
fucking
saying
shit
anything,
right
I
now. It's
reached around
funny.
and I laid him on the bars and then pulled my hand away. And he took them and he enjoyed them and all of that. And I'd say, gee, Herbie, did you eat all those peanuts? And he'd say, oh, no, I still got some left. I said, well, I got plenty more. I says, go ahead and enjoy them. So what I did is I started giving him bags of peanuts. And he had this horrible habit. There's guys back in the tank, and he and I are in these cells facing them through three sets of bars. And I can't see him, and he can't see me. I don't know where on the set of bars he is. The set of bars is maybe 9 feet wide and 8 or 9 feet high. And when he would get to acting up, he'd sit there for hours writing and writing at this little desk. And the other guys were ignoring him. So that night they're watching Saturday Night Special, with all this rock music playing and stuff, and they're enjoying it. He'd get up and make this real loud speech about how bad television is for you and why you shouldn't watch it. All the things it'll do to.
That's how you know this is in the 1970s, because they still, well, not still, they didn't know much about it, and it's parents today say the waves and all that, but we've got all the wave, the all the signals around us. But that's funny, and I am going to do a quick one on Herbie Miller. I'll do like a little 30-minute serial killer thing on Herbie Miller, not tonight, but just saying. I just sent that to my serial killer list.
And they're having fits. They're trying to throw things at him. They can't get at him. They're raging. They're mad because he's destroying the one thing they really enjoy. And he's just having a ball doing this. They'll sit for hours all day writing this 2-hour speech, exactly as long as it takes to watch that show. So he'd also sit over there and sing these horrible songs. He couldn't sing a lick at all. And he's singing these horrible songs. And one time I was in the car coming back to Redwood City, and the cop got so upset at the singing he's doing in the back of the station wagon. He turns around with his can of mace. He says, "I've had it. Get out of the way, Kemper." And I'm saying, "Hey, wait a minute. You're going to get me with that stuff." He's trying to mace the guy in the back of the car because he won't shut up. And he's trying to get him to shut up. And the guy just ignored him. He had this way of really getting in people's nerves. So he'd pull these little stunts, these horrible songs and the speeches and things. And I'd say, "Herbie, why do you do stuff like that?" He said, "So I have a right to do what I want to do too." And yeah, okay, right. So I started this what they call just real basic behavior
kind of
modification
bunking him. It's
therapy.
funny.
I'd had a little bit of psychology study.
Oh my
I'd worked
God.
in the psych testing area in Atascadero.
No way.
I knew some of these things.
This guy.
So I set up a very basic and very essential,
Oh my
bare
God.
minimum behavior experiment, behavior modification, right? You reward them when they're good, you punish them when they're bad. And if you're absolutely accurate when
Unbelievable.
you do these things, quick punishment when they do bad and quick reward when they do good.
Coming from
Supposedly,
Ed
this is supposed
Kemper.
to attack you at a subliminal level, a
Ladies and
subconscious
gentlemen.
level, and you don't have a lot of control over your reactions, that it would improve your behavior essentially. And then they have these great elaborate experiments like in Youth Authority when I went through, where they try these things. So what I did is when he was bad, I'd get a cup full of water in a styrofoam cup and I'd reach around and I'd throw it on him. And
Wow.
it's embarrassing, and it also gets his papers wet, and so we got in this cat and mouse game. When he was good, I'd give him peanuts, and I'd try to gas him when he was bad. It's called gassing. Throw this water on him.
This is
And
cool.
he'd duck all over the house.
Listen
I
to
couldn't
this.
figure out where he was at, so I kept missing him. So what I did is I waited one day till I knew he was asleep, or I suspected he was.
Wow.
And I called one of the guys over to the bars from the
Pretty much.
the place in the back,
Right?
the tank. And I went like this. And I says, and he reads it, and he says, and I said, "Shh." And I called him over to the bars, and I said, "Hey," I said, "I want to work something out where I can get Herbie with these cups of water, and he can't figure out how I'm doing it." And I says, "I just thought of a way." And he says, "What's that?" And I said, "I want you to set up a grid on the bars where you're at. Put a little piece of string or a little piece of plastic or a little something he won't notice. Count over how many bars there are on his cell front, and from the wall, go over that far on your set and set up boundaries. And then when I give you a signal that will be a hand signal, very casually walk over. Don't look at me, just casually walk over and drape yourself on the bars where he's at, so I'll know. And if he's back away from the bars, go back that far and position yourself so it's a grid, it's targeting grid." So he would do this, and Herbie'd hear me turn the water on, or maybe I'd have some already set up, and I would reach through the bars and I'd blast him. I got him every time. And he couldn't figure out how all of a sudden I got so accurate, And it was without fail. I get him
He's so proud of
with that water,
himself.
wham. And, it's
So
embarrassing,
funny.
and everybody's laughing back there, and good shot, Ed, and all that stuff. And then I'd ask him if he'd do something, or, "Hey, can we do this?" or whatever,
Everybody, if you lost track, he's talking about playing a cat and mouse game with another serial killer called Herbie Miller. Herbert Miller killed 13 people in California in the 1970s. So we have Ed Kemper, serial killer, killing 10 people, decapitating, necrophiliac, and dismembering. And then you got Herbert Millen, who killed 13 people, both of them in California. Now they say Herbert Millen, they don't really even say, they just say brutal murder. So we'll have to get into that. But that's what he's talking about, playing cat and mouse with another serial killer in California, in jail. So weird.
He'd participate in something with me. I give him peanuts. When he's bad, he gets blasted with water. This went on for 2 or 3 weeks. And he actually got away from the bad behavior when he said, hey, I want to sing. And I says, well, hey, guys in the back, do you mind if he sings? Oh, we don't want to hear that shit, man. I said, hey, you want to hear it now or do you want to hear it tonight when you're watching the show? Yeah, okay. So go ahead, Herbie, sing.
What did you
And
say?
he'd sing for 30, 40 seconds and then get bored and say, gee, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, because the fun was
I
gone.
forgot there was even a host.
The point is, it got a handle on his behavior. And the cops are watching this. The deputies are on camera watching me. I mean, they're on the monitors watching every move I'm making, right? And they're fascinated. They're watching this thing going back and forth with me and Herbie. They're not involving themselves. They're just watching it. And after a while, one of them came in and said, Herbie is completely cooperative now. He's not messing around. Because I've been, as we're talking, these little frictions out between he and I'm showing him some insights into why people don't like him. I'm showing some insights into what his behavior is causing in them. And he had realized by that point that it was just, he's reacting to how people are reacting to him. And it's just a self-perpetuating thing. And it was the only way he could get out his negative feelings. And I said, well, why don't you pose on the positive? Focus on the positive instead, and the negative will go away. I don't think anybody ever did that with him before, because he responded real well to it. And later when we were up here in the hole together,
guy,
and we weren't even supposed to be together. They didn't want us together. But we were up in the hole together. I was the only guy he could talk to. A lot of pain inside. He had a lot of anguish inside. He had a lot of hate inside. And it was addressed at people he didn't even know, because he didn't dare do anything to the people he knew. Because he was aware of all of the structure around that, and that would be the end of his life. And so I started, the way I found out about these things is I would pose little comments or questions aimed at him as we're sitting up there on the tier, on the concrete floor, sitting there again.
Sounds like he had a crush on Herbie Miller, everybody. He put a lot of time into this serial killer bromance there.
It's the wall talking to one another. And I would say, how did you feel? You know, what did you, when you bought that little Saturday night special 22, I says, did you ever go out shooting with that? You know, just target shooting? He says, well, not much. And I say, well, try this on. You loaded it up. You went out, you set up bottles, you set up cans, you set them around in little areas right around close and practice shooting them real fast. And he looks at me all shocked. He says, how do you know that? I said, because that's what I used to do. And those were people. Those weren't cans and bottles. And you never told anybody. So he got all fascinated about how I was able to read his mind and stuff. I wasn't. I saw a kindred spirit there. Somebody who was doing something very similar to what I was doing as a child.
Another
he went
serial
to mental
killer.
institutions, and he went through these processes where these doctors
Bravo,
told him what
Ed.
was wrong with him. These
Bravo.
doctors treated things that they decided were wrong with him, and he just sat back very passively and went through these treatments, and they had almost no effect on him because he didn't dare say what was really going on in his head, because they would cast him off somewhere. He'd be totally separated from the human race. And there were certain things he and certain things I enjoyed in being in the human race and being part of the human race. We weren't willing to let go of. So that was that little desperate hanging on. So here comes these professionals saying, oh, this is wrong with you, little lad, and this is wrong with you, and we're going to fix this up, and okay, I'm well, and yeah. Goes out and buys a gun and starts killing people. And I talk about what happened when he killed those people. Oh, they fell dead. And I said, no, they did this, they did that. They gurgled, and some of them kept moving like you hadn't even shot them. And you shot them again. And he says, how did you know this? You weren't there. And I says, I know. I never told anybody that. I know. I was there on my own trip. I know what happened. Herbie, don't give me that bullshit about earthquakes, and don't give me that crap about God was telling you. I says, you couldn't even be talking to me now if God was talking to you, because of the pressure I'm putting on you right now. These little shocking insights into what you did. God would start talking to you right now if you were really that kind of ill, because I grew up with people like that. Where? In a maximum security hospital for the criminally insane, adults. I was 15 years old when I went there.
To go back before that time, when you ran away from your mother and went to your grandmother.
No, went to my father.
Yes, but afterwards,
yeah.
When you went to your grandmother, you were 14, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you feel you had to kill her?
That was an outburst. It wasn't felt I had to. I went up there hoping, I didn't go there for one thing. I got left there. We went there for Christmas from my father's in LA. We went up to the mountains to stay for Christmas, and I got left behind. I was having friction with my stepbrother and my stepmother. There was problems there.
We were vying for his interests, vying for his love. They were desperate because they're the new family. I'm desperate because I've never had the man of my life. I wanted my father's love. I wanted his approval. I wanted his recognitions. And we all got very...
I wonder if he approved of this. I wonder if he was still alive after he killed his mom and the grandparents. Interesting. Maybe he'll tell us, since this guy is not directing this interview very well at all. I don't think he understands half of what he's saying.
Greedy and desperate at that time. So we fought each other a lot. And it was a lot of friction, and he couldn't handle that. So he got rid of me. I was old family. I was already a failure. So, you know, I got parked up in the mountains. There was a lot of dressing on it, and window dressing and things. But I was up there with them for 10 months. At first it was okay, because it was the calm of being away from Montana. There wasn't the hellish stuff. I was going to a good school. As the months went on, the veneer went away. My grandmother had made agreements with me from the gate that she wouldn't get into little humiliating mind games with
and
me,
he
like
killed
my
her.
mother and
Wow.
stepfather had done, right? And I agreed I wouldn't do certain things. And then this mind game stuff started up. She decides she's going to raise me like she raised her 3 sons, and she's going to get rid of all this negative crap that my mother put on me. She's recognizing it as something my mother put on me, and I don't know that it wasn't. Some of it was. But a lot of it was my inability to deal with complex, critical, psychological situations. I could not deal with them. So I resisted it. I ran away. That was my answer, to run. I ran from the people in Montana. I ran from my mother in Montana. I let my father park me up there to get away from the strife in LA. Now I'm stuck. All the bridges are burned because my grandparents are there 24 hours a day. I can't run from them. She never let me get out of her sight for more than an hour without yelling my name out to see where I was. She was convinced I wanted to go down the mountain.
So rough. Sorry, Ed.
To hang around with kids, rowdies and stuff, and be a juvenile delinquent. So she would never let me go down there on my own. She'd never let me leave the property. And it started simmering, I guess. Started building the passions and the tension. I started developing the fantasies toward her from my mother, killing her. And in the decapitation fantasies were even there. They were in place by then already. And
what were those fantasies?
What were they?
Yes.
Possessing the severed heads of women. Men didn't turn me on. That wasn't very, I couldn't appreciate the appearances of a guy.
I'm glad you're not gay, Ed.
And I'm seeing, this was not common, but it was a frequent feature in some movies where they use a shock effect. They'll have someone get their head cut off, or there's a...
You like how he can not talk about sex very much. He's like very straight away from that, but he can talk about somebody getting decapitated or just nonchalantly murdering someone, no problem. Let's listen to this. This is interesting because this did happen. I mean, they still probably do this. We just don't know about it.
Heads sitting there when they come around the corner or open the drawer or something. And it went from, that got caught up in my morbid fascination. I made a comment and someone wrote about it that when I was young, I was about 8 or 9 years old, I went to this little, come on, it was like at a record store or something, and they had this crowd of kids there, and there was a magic show. And this guy, you've probably seen it, the fake guillotine, hand pressed, and they put the potato there, and someone puts their neck in the brace, and they slam this thing down, and the potato down below chops in two, but the person's head doesn't fall off, right? And everybody gets very fascinated by that. Oh my God. And then when he puts the blade in place and he pushes it down, it goes through that neck hole, but it never chops anybody's head off. Okay, so he wanted to volunteer out of the, I'm not standing in this crowd watching this show, and he wanted to volunteer out of the audience. And some quite beautiful little 16-year-old girl gets up there and it's a big laugh and, you know, all giddy and stuff. And I started getting caught up in this. I said, wow. Right at that moment, I departed reality, because logically, I should have been able to ascertain that that could not happen. You're not going to get away with chopping somebody's head off in the middle of Helena, Montana, the capital city.
See, you hear he talks about chopping someone's head off. I can't even say it without laughing. I'm sorry. It's just he's talking about it so nonchalant. And it happened so long ago that if it was like yesterday, it would bother me tonight, but it's old and chill Friday.
But the concept of it was so raw and it was titillating. I says, wow, Jay, I gotta watch this. And he had her girlfriend come over and put her hands there to catch her head so it wouldn't fall in the basket, you know. And he was making jokes about this.
Oh my
I got
God.
caught up in this
Yeah, you
this
did.
interplay between normal concerns. You don't want to get a bump on her
Absolutely.
head. Well, hey, if you're chopping her head off, it doesn't matter. Right?
Wow.
And this is catching in my mind somehow, and I'm saying, wow. And naturally, everybody let out a shriek, and they're all excited and oh wow. And as he chops and the potato falls and her head doesn't go anyplace, and he unlocks the brace and she gets out laughing, and he gives her some little prize for coming up and participating in the experiment. That's the first time I'd ever seen a show like that. You know, you see things like that on TV, it's one thing, but to be there and watch things like that, you get more caught up in it. And
Yeah,
I
but you
went
don't
from there.
want
That
to
became
do it.
another piece. That's the only way I can really, the only event in my
Wow.
life that I can align that fascination with.
Chopping off heads?
Was the fact that she was a very alluring young lady. I'm coming close to approaching puberty. I think I hit it a little early because between the ages of about 10 and 13, I was going through some incredible emotional shifts. And they say that going into puberty for young men and girls, I guess, is a very, very upheaving time in their lives. And without a lot of positive input from parental or adult figures, it can go in some really wild directions. In my case, it was embedded in this negative orientation thing. I would go back to my basement bedroom and I would fantasize to protect myself. I'd go off into fantasy worlds that got a vengeance on my enemies. It got even with the bullies who picked on the kids and me in school. It got even with someone who slighted me. Even adults. I mean, they talk in various relationships how we have our darker side, and there's things that you have thought, as an example, that you never want to share with anybody because they're so cruel or they're so unspeakably out of sync with what's going on that you would be too ashamed to share it with someone. Like, well, I'd like to knock his head off, or I'd like to kill this guy, or she's such a bitch, you know. We all do that. I didn't know that. So I'm adding to the problem, the impetus of this negative orientation. I must be really evil little kid because I'm thinking all these horrible things. I was thinking of them in increasing amounts and increasing frequency, so it's a kind of conditioning and negative conditioning.
No, this is not right, everybody. Just so you know, I've been watching horror movies since I can remember 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7. Now I'm 44, and we're huge horror fans around here, and we see way more than this. Tom Savini is the master of horror, making the most realistic horror things, and people getting chopped up and blood. And we go to horror conventions and we meet the people that play Jason and Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund. Our daughter's gone there. She's met all of the horror, all the cast members, all the people that play the horror guys, Kane Hodder and Robert Englund, and so many more, Michael Myers, all of that. They love my daughter, by the way. Absolutely fascinated. We've got all the autographs and all the stuff, and none of us want to kill or hurt anyone, but we do love the art of how it's created. And like CGI nowadays is crap compared to them making that. But I never thought about chopping somebody's head off, or like, I mean, maybe I've been mad at somebody thinking, man, but yeah, Jigsaw. We've met all of these people. This guy is just out of his fucking mind what he's talking about right now. It's like he's normalizing what he does. Let's keep watching. We're getting there. I'm getting tired too, everybody.
Conditioning that
4 minutes.
I wasn't aware of other than effect. I noticed that if I worked on a certain scenario, a certain kind of patterning in my fantasies, right, after a while it became numb, it became insignificant, it became not enough. So I had to add embellishments to it, a new level. And it just very subtle, but over many, many years, it just kept going more and more.
I've known young people that I've been able to talk to honestly, and knowing them well enough and friendly enough over enough years, share with me, because it was of real importance to me to know where I dove off the deep end. And they would admit that sometimes they went off into happier orientations. They had a period where they went off into some real morbid or negative fascinations, but they grew out of it, quote unquote, grew out of it. It stopped providing a service that they needed. It stopped filling a hole or a gap, or let's say an adult came along and started sharing something with them or showed them a new avenue of acting out that completely obliterated that need or vacated it, and they let it go. I didn't. The adult wasn't there.
Yeah, this
my
guy.
mother was there. She was there to beat me. She was there to humiliate me. She was there to use me as an example of how inferior men are. And that was a great little lady there.
Absolutely,
She
Jared 13.
kind of preceded this female movement we have now of getting rights, of getting equal rights, of getting equal standing, of getting equal presence in various theaters.
But actually, you had experimented.
I was finding out the hard way what women's rights and women's antagonism. I mean, women are drove about things like that. They get upset about the belittlements they get and the lack of equality that they should that they have.
Oh man!
Unfortunately,
this
my
guy
mother developed, and I'm not. It's not fair to talk about a dead person that way. They can't defend themselves. They can't give you another perspective on what really happened. I can only surmise to try to be fair. Looking back on it, I'm seeing that she was making an effort to balance her pain with what she was experiencing. And if you look at her dad, he's a wimp. He never did anything. Mom did everything, so she orientated toward her. So she comes out doing that stuff. I find out in sociological studies and psychological studies, that's normal, not necessarily healthy.
Imagine women talking back, everybody. I think almost everyone on here right now is a female, and women talking back. Can you imagine the women's rights over here? Ed Kemper, serial killer of 10 people, 9 of them women, damn women, and them talking back.
But that happens. And my dad, being the wimp out of his family, goes and finds my mom, who's the dynamo out of her family, and they get married, and it'll either work or it won't. And in his case, it didn't work because she kept hammering on him. She wanted him to change this. She wanted him to change that, and he couldn't handle that. After 13 years, he'd had enough. What I resented was I had a mother, I had a father. Father worked, he brought in a big paycheck. We had a nice house, we had friends, we went to school, right? We had birthdays, we had Christmas, we had vacations. He had Saturday night with the poker buddies out in the guest house by the garage. We were living pretty good. And she absolutely hated that. This stereotypical response of this deadhead, this muttonhead she's married to, of wanting to go out and play cards in a smoke-filled room, drinking.
You're absolutely right, Carly. It did in the early 90s. Gays weren't okay. Trust me, I know. Women, you can just pat them on the butt at work. The managers, sexual harassment, women's rights. There was, nobody really cared about it. There was there, but people didn't care. So yeah, definitely interesting to hear this. It's funny on all kinds of levels. And we have like another minute and a half.
Beer and with these old war buddies. See, I had another problem. My father was in the first special service.
You have a lot of problems, sir.
World War II. They did a book and a movie called The Devil's Brigade. He was a combat sergeant in that group. And he volunteered for that as a single man. They would not take married men. That's how my parents met. She was working as a secretary in Helena, Montana, the capital city. He's a few miles out of town at an old, retired, closed-down cavalry fort for the U.S. Army that was reopened as a secret base for these guys to train out of at Fort William Henry Harrison, just outside of town. They got to know each other. They quite, it wasn't secretly, but it was very quietly got married, because if they'd have known he got married, he'd have been kicked out of the group. This is what was described as the suicide brigade. 5,000 men trained in all these devastation ways, right? He goes off to war and he does some horrible things. He can't talk about those things.
All right. That was the extended version, everybody. That was extended, by the way. Wow, we got through it all together. 3 hours, 8 minutes, and 35 seconds, everybody. Thank you for hanging in here with me on a Friday night. It's 9:39, and I appreciate you guys. We're on serial killer number 4, Ed Kemper. So I've got 6 more to do. I'm going to throw the Herbie Miller in there in between. All of these guys fascinate me. Serial killers are fascinating creatures. And we also learn a lot about humanity and the dark side of humanity when we watch this. So, we can sit here and talk crap about them talking, and we can analyze it and whatever, but it gives us signs, and we're fascinated by it. And we're fascinated by it in a healthy way, not like that guy. So I appreciate every single one of you. And I'm going to be on tomorrow at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time with the Poco Moonshine family. We're talking about Elijah Vu. He's still missing. It's 3 weeks later, and he hasn't been found. The mom has been charged, and they want to go to trial, but I think she might be taking a deal, and they don't even have a body. So 12 o'clock tomorrow. There's not a link on my channel yet because we're dual streaming, but there's on my page, the social page where it's just post, there's a link and a thumbnail. So yeah, daytime show at 12 noon during the day. I'll be on there talking about Elijah Vu. This guy is going to go out there, and hopefully he's going to meet up with Marv at some point. Marv's going to be out there from Beyond Evidence searching for Elijah Vu. We're going to talk about a bunch of new things in the case and the search. Yeah, watch it. There's the link right there. You can click on it in the comments right here. It's just watch whatever, blah, blah, blah. But tomorrow at 12 noon. So yeah, it's getting late for me. 3 hours. I appreciate every single one of you, and I will see you soon. We'll be back with something. I just don't know what after that. So whatever comes up that is interesting and new. Good night, everybody, and sleep well. Jay from Guilty of Crime.
Guilty of Crime.
I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my content, please share this video, like, and subscribe. You can also follow me over at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, or Gmail. If you'd like to donate to my channel, you can use Cash App or Venmo or PayPal. Thank you very much in advance. Guilty of Crime.
Are you guilty of crime?